Chapter 799. Chu Tenghu snorted heavily. He couldn't bear it any longer and said angrily, Chu Yang, don't go too far. Chu Yang was surprised. I went too far? He suddenly jumped up and said angrily, I went too far? How did I go too far? I'm doing my best for the clan. I'm doing my best to treat patients. How did I go too far? Chu Tenghu was so angry that his whole body trembled. Don't think that others can't control you. If you dare to indulge in others again, I'll teach you a lesson. Chu Yang stuck out his chest and squinted his eyes. Why don't you try to teach me a lesson? As he said, he came closer. Chu Tenghu was so angry that his face turned pale. But if he really wanted to hit Chu Yang, he really didn't dare to do so in front of so many people. Because Chu Yang had always been the boss. If he, as the younger brother, hit Chu Yang, it would be tantamount to disrespecting his elder. It would be an act of disobedience. In the clan rules, it was clearly written that he would be expelled from the clan, and the most infuriating thing was that although Chu Yang had done everything, he was in the right. This was what made people unable to spit out blood. He was indeed doing his best to treat patients, although he couldn't treat them well. He also didn't take the initiative to provoke anyone. He was always the one who took the initiative to strike first. Everything had its cause and effect. Chu Tenghu and Chu Tengjiao glared at Chu Yang, but there was nothing they could do. Just as they were in a stalemate, suddenly, someone came to the door. Who's the shopkeeper here? Someone asked calmly at the door. Everyone looked back and saw a man wearing a law enforcement officer's uniform walking in with his hands clasped behind his back. The word law enforcement officer was printed in silver on his chest. It was actually a silver plate law enforcement officer. Behind him, there were two ordinary iron plate law enforcement officers. The three of them walked in as if no one else was around. Chu Tenghu hurried over with a face full of smiles. Oh, it's law enforcement officers. May I know why you're here? That law enforcement officer snorted and said, You're the shopkeeper? Chu Tenghu said, Yes, it's me. Very good. The law enforcement officer's face instantly darkened, and he shouted, Look at your clinic, what's up with it? What's the matter with those indecipherable things outside? Indecipherable? Chu Tenghu was stunned. Those paintings are unsightly. He's clearly a demon who's polluting the world. The enforcer snorted and waved his hand. Tie him up. Bring him back for interrogation. Let's see who sent him to pollute the flat mountain ridge. I suspect that this guy is a spy from the 3 Stars Divine Clan. A spy from the 3 Stars Divine Clan? This hat was really big, and it wasn't something that an ordinary person could wear. Chu Tenghu was dumbfounded at once. He retreated continuously. Your Excellency, I'm innocent. She suddenly remembered, and pushed Chu Yang out. She hurriedly said, My lord, this is all his doing. He's the shopkeeper. The enforcer asked. Chu Tenghu widened his eyes. We're only looking for the shopkeeper, only the person in charge. The enforcer snorted and said, He's just a worker. Why are we looking for him? Chu Yang stepped forward to plead, Law enforcement officer, this is my younger brother. He's young and ignorant. Although he's wrong, he's still, worthy of forgiveness. The enforcer rolled his eyes and said sternly, I only know that the law is merciless, but I don't know that young people can be forgiven. If you have something to say, go and talk to the commander. Bring him away. 2 enforcers had already rushed forward like wolves and tigers, and tied Chu Tenghu up on the ground. Their movements were very familiar. As Chu Tenghu struggled, he cried out in grief and indignation, Why didn't you come to investigate when he was here a few days ago? Now that I've taken over, you're here to investigate. You're obviously colluding with each other. As law enforcement officers, you actually. The law enforcer kicked him and scolded, We law enforcers can investigate whenever we want. How dare you say that we should or shouldn't? You've slandered a law enforcement officer, and your crime is increased by 1 level. You've slandered a law enforcement operation, and your crime is increased by 3 levels. Chu Tenghu was in so much pain that his tears flowed out. He said, Tengjiao. Quickly go back and inform father. Let him save me. Chu Tengjiao ran away. The enforcer's eyes lit up. There's actually a fish that escaped the net. Take down this accomplice as well. He stretched out his hand and pressed down Chu Tengjiao, who had already run to the door. Then, Chu Tengjiao fell to the ground. A rope was looped around his neck. Then, he was tied up again and slapped on his face. The enforcer said, "Are there any more accomplices?" Chu Tengjiao looked at him with grief and indignation. He gritted his teeth and didn't say a word. The enforcer moved closer to his ear. "What? There's another two? Those two old men? What the heck? I say, the two of you don't have any intention of obstructing the public's image. You're actually two old men. No wonder you keep talking about aphrodisiac. Take them down." The two old men rolled their eyes and fainted. The three enforcers escorted the four people back. Before they left, they didn't even say anything about rectification. That obstructing the public billboard was still standing there, and it was very eye-catching. It's not good. Miracle Dr. Chu Yang patted his butt and walked out. Looking at the disappearing figures, he looked extremely panicked. He turned back, closed the door swiftly and ran back to the Chu clan. In the Chu clan, Chu Feilong was supervising the clan's martial artists in the square. He pondered, Chu Yang has been slacking off these few days. What should I do to stop him from doing so? He thought and thought, but he didn't have a good idea. He frowned and thought, do I have to go on like this? While he was pondering, suddenly, a loud and clear shout came from the door. Oh no, my two younger brothers have been taken away by the enforcers. They've committed a serious crime. It was Chu Yang's voice. In the hall of the Chu clan, Old Master Chu sat at the front with a black face. Below him, all the important members of the Chu clan were seated. At this moment, Chu Yang was anxiously narrating what had happened. He said that Chu Tenghu and Chu Tengjiao had been taken away by the enforcers. He tried his best to save them, but the enforcers were impartial and had no effect at all. He had no choice but to return to the clan for help. Chu Feiling, Yong Ruolan and Chu Feiyan looked strange. Chu Feilong was so angry that his nose became crooked. Chu Yang finally finished narrating. Looking at everyone's expression, he suddenly rushed to Chu Feilong and said anxiously, "Second uncle, quickly think of a way to save Tenghu and Tengjiao. I've seen the enforcers' methods last time. I was so scared that I couldn't sleep for a few days and nights. If the two of them stay in there for too long, they'll suffer a lot of torture." Chu Yang's face was full of deep brotherly affection. He almost cried, "Second uncle, they're your biological sons. You can't leave them alone." Chu Feilong's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. It was so ugly that he couldn't wait to kill Chu Yang. "This bastard, you're the one who framed my sons. How dare you put on an act in front of me? Think of a way." "What fucking way can I think of? This is obviously your conspiracy. You've captured my sons and asked me to get them back. I dare to bet that I'll definitely be detained as an accomplice once I reach the law enforcement hall. Isn't this fucking delivering the goods to my doorstep? As long as you're in the way, I'm afraid that even if your grandfather goes there, it'll be useless. What other way can I think of?" The other stewards in the hall looked at each other, and their expressions were very strange. The crime of being indecent. When did the enforcers come up with such a new crime? I've never heard of it before. Using this reason to arrest two dukes of the Chu clan, one of the three big clans, is simply ridiculous. One of the stewards coughed and said, "Young Master Chu Yang, you mean, the enforcer's reason for arresting the two young masters is being indecent, right?" Chu Yang said, "Yes, that's what the enforcers said." The steward snorted and said, "If that's the case, I'm puzzled. Young Master Chu Yang, you've been in the Purple Crystal's Huichun Hall for quite some time. And the drawings on the wall were also drawn by you personally. Even if it's indecent, but, before this, the enforcers didn't say anything about it, right?" Chu Yang said blankly, "Yes, they didn't say anything before this." "This is really strange." The steward's face darkened and he said, "Then, I'd like to ask, why didn't the enforcers care about this in the past, but the two young masters have only been there for a few days and the enforcers have already come? There's something very strange about this. I hope young Master Chu Yang can clear up my doubts." These words were spoken in an aggressive manner. His sharp eyes were looking at Chu Yang. The other stewards chimed in and raised their objections. Instantly, the focus of the entire hall was on Chu Yang again. Yes, young Master Chu Yang has been fine for more than a month, but the two young masters were arrested the moment they went there. And young Master Chu Yang, the main culprit, wasn't even arrested. This is too strange. Young Master Chu Yang must have some explanation, right? Yes, I think there's a conspiracy in this. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Chu Yang's face was full of doubts. He scratched his head and said, yes, what you all said is too reasonable. Actually, I was also wondering why such a thing would happen. That's too unreasonable. What you're saying is simply right into my heart. Everyone was speechless for a moment. They looked at Chu Yang with even more ridiculousness. The steward said coldly, could it be that young Master Chu Yang really doesn't know anything about this matter? It can be said that the law enforcement officers have never acted so strangely before. But since young Master Chu Yang came, everything has happened. This has made us think a little more. Chu Yang was stunned and said, I don't understand what you mean. The steward sneered, what I mean is very simple. Could it be that young Master Chu Yang colluded with the enforcers? Framing the two young masters would have a lot of benefits for you. Chu Yang stared blankly for a while. Then, he finally flew into a rage. He was so angry that his face turned red. He felt so wronged that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. He angrily said, this chief steward, what are you saying? What do you mean? Am I that kind of person? Not only are you slandering me, but you're also slandering the enforcers. This is intolerable. You can say that, but show me the evidence. If you can't show me the evidence, I'll go to the enforcers and sue you for slander. The steward was stunned. He immediately avoided Chu Yang's eyes. His face turned pale and he kept quiet out of fear. Thank you to Shi Zhu, Jibei Chen Feng and Tian Tian for your gifts. Thank you to more than 20 brothers and sisters who gave me the gift. Thank you for your subscriptions and monthly votes. Thank you. I'm in Guilin now. The scenery here is indeed very beautiful. But I'm so tired that my back hurts. Every day when I come back to the hotel, I lie down like a dead pig. This is definitely tiring work. I'll go home in a few days. During this period of time, I don't dare to go online to chat. If I do, I won't be able to complete the 2 chapters daily. But I miss you all. At #download for free, and L, End and G. Chapter 800. Who's the shopkeeper of the purple crystals Huichun Hall? Chu Tenghu. Besides, Chu Tenghu is now caught by the law enforcement officers. How can I interrogate him? Do I have to go to the law enforcement hall to interrogate him? Isn't that sending myself to their doorstep? The shopkeeper's face turned red and he said, if you didn't play tricks in this matter, how can we not even earn a single purple crystal? Chu Yang felt so wronged that he couldn't say anything. He stretched out his trembling finger and pointed at the shopkeeper. He coughed continuously and gasped for breath. Divine Dr. Chu had learned from such people during this period of time. Net 7 asterisk, then, he finally let out a sigh and rushed over. He pointed at the shopkeeper's nose and said loudly, you're insinuating that I've harmed the clan's interests. This is really the greatest shame in my life. As the saying goes, if you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. It's really hard to wash away today's injustice. For my innocence and reputation, I'm going to sue you for slander. I'm going to sue you for slander to the law enforcement officers. Everyone burst into laughter. The shopkeeper's face turned white and red. He finally couldn't help but stand up and said, am I not telling the truth? Chu Yang said angrily, you're slandering me. You're biting me without any basis. Let me tell you, when we reach the law enforcement hall, the truth will be revealed. Just you wait. Chu Xiongqing shouted, enough. Chu Yang sat down angrily and said, Grandpa, look at what this dog slave is saying. I'm the big duke of the Chu clan, the eldest young master. It can be said that if there's no accident, no conflict between brothers, the Chu clan will be mine in the future. This dog slave actually dares to say that I've harmed the clan's interest. Why doesn't he widen his dog eyes and use his paste-like brain to think that I've harmed the clan's interests? Isn't that the same as cutting myself open? How can there be such a stupid person in the world? This dog slave obviously has ulterior motives. Grandpa, please punish him severely. Chu Xiongcheng frowned and had a headache. Stop talking. Sigh, this Sun Qiong was simply a hedgehog. No one could touch him. If he was right, he wouldn't forgive him, but if he was unreasonable, he would harass him. His ability to confuse right and wrong was really amazing. Everyone didn't speak and remained silent like this. Templar not long after, Chu Feiling flew in. Chu Xiongcheng asked anxiously, "How is it?" Chu Feilong also raised his head abruptly. Chu Feiling was carrying the bundle that he had brought out earlier. It was quite heavy inside. He shook his head and said, "Sho Xinliang didn't allow me to speak at all, nor did he accept any gifts. He just sent me back. He said that this matter was a hindrance to public morals and had a great influence, so they had to proceed with caution. He even said that the 3 Stars Divine clan might have bewitched his mind, and that there might be a mastermind behind it. They are currently interrogating him. I wanted to meet him, but I was rejected." Everyone was shocked. At one side, Chu Feilong's wife started to cry. Chu Feilong's face turned as white as a sheet of paper. "Interrogation?" Old Master Chu exclaimed, "How can the 2 of them withstand the interrogation of the law enforcement hall?" There was no need for him to say this. Everyone understood. Chu Tonghu and Chu Tongjiao had been spoiled since they were young. How could they bear the punishment? Old Master Chu stomped his feet and said, "Forget it, I'll give up this old face and go there personally." "I'm afraid that even if you go there, it won't be of any use," Chu Feilong said faintly. "Then who will be of any use?" Chu Xiongcheng shouted furiously, "Your son has been caught, but as a father, you're actually indifferent. You didn't even say a word from the beginning till the end. How can there be such a heartless father in the world?" Chu Feilong's face was gloomy. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. "Say it. Who will be of any use?" Old Master Chu shouted. He was really angry. Chu Yang smiled and said, "Grandpa, don't worry. Since second uncle doesn't look anxious at all, he must have a well-thought-out plan. I'm sure nothing will happen." Chu Feilong suddenly raised his head and looked at Chu Yang. He actually revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth and said, Yang is right. I do have a well-thought-out plan, because I know that you are the only one who can release my 2 sons." Chu Yang shook his head and said, "I don't have that ability. Even my father was rejected. What's the use of me going there?" Chu Feilong stared at him. He was still smiling and said, Yang, you've won. What do you want? I'll give it all to you. As long as you release your 2 brothers, it'll be fine." Chu Yang said sincerely, "I really can't do it. I can't do it no matter what you say. Even if you give me the sun, moon, and stars in the sky, I still can't do it no matter what I say." Chu Feilong looked at him and said slowly, "The purple crystals Huachun Hall will only be managed by you. How about that?" Chu Yang smiled helplessly and said, "Second uncle, don't force me. I don't even know the law enforcement officers." Chu Feilong took a deep breath and said, "Restore it to its original state. From now on, it'll be your personal property. The clan won't interfere. How about that?" Chu Yang was helpless. "I'm really not familiar with the law enforcement officers, everyone despised him. Previously, he said that he couldn't do it no matter what. When the first condition was raised, it became that he didn't even know the law enforcement officers. When the second condition was raised, it immediately became that he wasn't familiar with the law enforcement officers. You've changed your mind so quickly." Chu Feilong's eyes were like fire. He continued slowly, "In the future, I'll promise you one request, no matter what it is. How about that?" Chu Yang sighed, "Second uncle, you're saying this as if you're the clan master. Grandpa hasn't said anything yet." Net. Chu Xiongcheng sighed and said, Yang, let's just make do with it. Grandpa also agrees with what your second uncle said." Chu Yang sighed as if he was forced into a corner. He suddenly turned around and pointed at the 3 chief stewards who were the most arrogant. He shouted angrily, "What are the 3 of you muttering about? What do you mean? You dare to say that my second uncle is a fool? You're rebelling." The 3 of them were shocked and said, You, what nonsense are you talking about? "When did we say that?" Chu Yang shouted, "You did say that. I heard it very clearly. All of you are scolding Chu Fei Long for being a fool, and you're even scolding him like this. Chu Fei Long is a fool. Chu Fei Long is a fool. You scolded him 3 times consecutively. Chu Fei Long was about to spit out a mouthful of blood. He gritted his teeth. He knew what Chu Yang meant. This was Chu Yang's last condition. Not only did he scold me in front of everyone, but he also wanted me to kill these 3 people personally. He wanted me to kill my most capable assistants personally. Chu Feilong's facial muscles twitched and he was in great pain. These 3 people were the chief stewards of the Chu clan, other than my brothers. Back then, he had spent a lot of effort to rope him in. At the start, I relied on these 3 people to establish my position in the Chu clan. They could be said to be indispensable figures in my camp. These 3 people were not only important to me, but they had also made great contributions. If I really killed them now, it would definitely make people disappointed. You even want to kill your subordinates, who are like brothers to you. Why would you bother others? In this way, I'm afraid that the hearts of my subordinates would immediately scatter. I don't know how much effort I would have to put in to get them back together. But now, I've made a mistake and caused 2 of my sons to fall into Chu Yang's hands. They're currently being tortured. If I'm late, I'm afraid I can only collect their corpses. He couldn't help but sigh and said, "Are the 3 of you really scolding me?" The 3 of them knew that things weren't going well. They knelt down and kowtowed. Second master, we definitely didn't. How would we dare to scold you?" Chu Feilong closed his eyes and said, "The 3 of you have scolded the direct descendants of the Chu clan without any reason. You've already violated the rules of the Chu clan. You'll be demoted 3 grades and be demoted to the chief steward of the outer hall." Chu Yang shouted, "Second uncle, they're really scolding you. I heard them scolding you like this. Chu Feilong is an idiot. Chu Feilong is an idiot. Chu Feilong is an idiot." Chu Fei Long swallowed a mouthful of blood with a gulp sound. He knew that Chu Yang's words meant, "If you don't kill these 3 people, I'll kill your sons. These 3 people must die." If he accepted the 3's demotion, then he wouldn't be so noisy anymore. This was an ultimatum. The 3 of them lost their heads out of fear. They repeatedly shouted, "Second master, we really didn't scold you." The 3 of them also knew that this matter was forced by Chu Yang. But they had nothing else to say besides this sentence. Chu Yang said coldly, "Look at you. Not only did you scold me here, you might have even scolded me at home." The 3 of them were in despair. Does he want to eliminate the source of trouble? Chu Feilong stood stiffly and didn't move. The strange thing was that no one in the hall said anything. No one tried to persuade Chu Yang. They only looked at Chu Yang and Chu Feilong standing stiffly. No one said a word. Chu Xiongqing looked at Chu Feilong with a complicated look. His expression changed and he even held his breath. Yang Ruolan grabbed Chu Feilong's arm tightly with one hand. Her breathing was a little hurried. Chu Feiyan looked at the hall calmly. Duan Shuyi, Chu Feilong's wife, Chu Feiyan's wife and other juniors sat together. They all covered their mouths with their hands subconsciously. Their eyes were full of shock. In the hall, the other stewards lowered their heads and didn't say a word. They were the ones who didn't dare to say anything. Everyone knew that if they pleaded for Chu Yang, young Master Chu would take advantage of the situation and say that they scolded Chu Feilong as an idiot. This would really cost them their lives. Whoever wanted to plead for Chu Yang could do so. After all, they were all idiots. Chu Feilong only hesitated for a moment, but Chu Yang had already added the family members of these 3 people. If it was me, everyone was silent. Not a single one of them unconsciously breathed as softly as possible. Chu Yang and Chu Feilong both stood. The 2 of them didn't say anything. But everyone knew that the deadlock between the uncle and nephew had reached the most critical moment. Chu Feilong's hands were trembling. Beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. Chapter 801. Chapter 70. I dare to swear this has nothing to do with Mither. Others also shrank their necks. Damn it, this little guy is really shameless. This matter was obviously planned by you. Who couldn't tell that you're doing this purely because you're dissatisfied with your clan for depriving you of your financial resources? That's why you colluded with the law enforcement officers to do this. Now, you're actually putting on an innocent face and dismissing yourself from this matter. If I really believe you, then there's something fishy going on. However, no one dared to force him anymore. Didn't you hear what he said? He's going to sue you for slander. The law enforcement officers have already done the unprecedented crime of indecency for this little guy. What's so strange about arresting another one for slander? Which one of the stewards wasn't smart to be able to reach their current positions? Everyone knew that as long as they were arrested, even if they didn't die, they would lose a layer of skin with this little guy fanning the flames. Who dared to provoke him? Chu Xiongqing coughed and said, Chu Yang, don't be so agitated. Everyone is discussing this matter. You can say whatever you want. I also want to hear your explanation. Chu Yang was stunned and said, Grandpa, what explanation do you want to hear? Chu Xiongqing's face turned black and he said, the explanation of the law enforcement officers arresting you. Chu Yang spread out his hands and said aggrievedly, Grandpa, you're making things difficult for me. That's the law enforcement officers doing their job. How would I know any explanation? If you want to know, you're asking the wrong person. You have to ask the law enforcement officers. Everyone felt dizzy. Damn it, if we can ask the law enforcement officers, why should we ask you? A steward lowered his head and said, maybe young Master Chu Yang is very angry because the two young masters went to the Purple Crystal's Huichun Hall, so This guy didn't dare to show his face. He hid in the crowd and spoke in a low voice. Obviously, he was afraid that Chu Yang would sue him for slander. Everyone revealed a look of it must be so. Chu Xiongqing sighed and said, Chu Yang, Grandpa knows that you've been wronged by the Purple Crystal's Huichun Hall. However, you and Teng Hu and Teng Jiao are brothers after all. What's more, with such a thing happening to the clan, there's no glory in it. In my opinion, let's not continue with this matter. Go and bring the two brothers out. Grandfather will definitely give you an explanation. How about it? It was obvious that the old master was certain that this matter was related to Chu Yang. Chu Yang said in an aggrieved manner, Grandpa, you're wrong. Even if I'm not sensible, I know that we're a clan, and blood is thicker than water. To be honest, the Purple Crystal's Huichun Hall had been taken back by the clan. After all, his grandson was still young and full of vigor. Naturally, he had some resentment in his heart. But later on, I figured it out. He raised his head and said righteously, because we are family members, we have to consider the family in everything we do. I am ready to sacrifice myself for the family at any time. For the family, I will give everything I have. The family's interests were paramount. The family's reputation was paramount. Increasing the strength of the family was the most important task at hand. We'll do everything for the family, and we'll do our best until we die. Even if it's a mountain of daggers or a sea of flames, as long as the clan needs me, I won't even frown. By the time he said this, half of the people in the hall had already fainted. Fuck, this guy really dares to say this. Look at how loyal he is. Compared to him, we're almost going to commit suicide out of shame. Chu Yang had an imposing appearance. The more he spoke, the more sonorous and impassioned his tone became. Therefore, it was the wisest decision for the Purple Crystal's Huichun Hall to take back the clan. I wholeheartedly support this decision. As for Teng Hu and Teng Jiao, just like what Grandpa said, we're brothers. Even though we're not of the same mother, blood is still thicker than water. The two of them are still young, so I should give in to them in everything. Even if I have to suffer some grievances for them, it doesn't matter, because they're my younger brothers. I used to be all alone. Now that I have two younger brothers who are so kind and affectionate, I'm really afraid that they'll melt in my mouth and fall out of my hands. I've been so happy these few days that we've been together. We have deep brotherly affection and get along very well with each other. The two of them are like fish in water with me, and the relationship between the two of us is even deeper. Why would I set them up? I don't even have enough time to cherish them, pity them and dote on them. As young Master Chu spoke till here, everyone in the hall had already fainted. Chu Feiyan kept his hands in his sleeves and looked up at the sky. The muscles on his face twitched. Occasionally, he glanced sideways at Chu Feilong and gloated in his heart, "You deserve it. You could have provoked anyone else. Why did you have to provoke the king of hell Chu? Now you know how powerful he is, right? Mitch, Yang Ruolan, who was originally worried, was now looking at Chu Yang, who was speaking with fervor and assurance, with a face full of shock. Oh, I'm too shocked. In my heart, my son has always been pure, kind, innocent and honest. But the image of him has collapsed in an instant. His words and actions today are actually so despicable and shameless. No, how witty and smart is he? He's so eloquent and eloquent. In the face of danger, he's actually so calm and composed. He's so reasonable. I was still worried about him previously. Now, it seems that he can completely turn danger into safety with his own abilities. The heavens have really blessed my son with such a smart brain. I'm not worried about him at all now. Instead, I'm worried about Chu Feilong. You're unlucky to have provoked my son. From what I see, you, Chu Feilong, aren't as thick-skinned as my son. Chu Xiongcheng fainted for a while before he asked with a black face, You mean, this matter has nothing to do with you? Chu Yang said seriously, I dare to point to heaven and earth and swear by the calamity sword that it has absolutely nothing to do with me. If it has anything to do with me, then let the calamity sword pierce through me 10,000 times. The calamity sword was the #1 divine item in the heavens. Swearing by the calamity sword was the most important oath in the upper 3 heavens. Once this sentence was said, Chu Xiongcheng immediately stopped talking. Everyone also stopped talking. Chu Yang had already sworn by the calamity sword. What else was there to say? Did he have to force Chu Yang to his death? Chu Yang's face was serious and solemn. He was proud in his heart. Let the calamity sword pierce through me 10,000 times. Mph, does it dare to do so? I'm the sword master. Yang Ruolan said anxiously, This child, what are you saying? If he didn't do it, he didn't do it. There's no need to swear such a heavy oath. As she said, she clasped her hands together and prayed silently. Obviously, she was praying for her son. Then, she opened her eyes and said, Father, since Yang said so, there's no doubt that this matter has nothing to do with him. Chu Xiongcheng sighed and said, You're right. It's just that this matter is really giving me a headache. He frowned and said, Why did the law enforcement officers suddenly deal with Teng Hu and Teng Jiao? This matter is truly perplexing. Chu Yang continued, Yes, I've thought about this matter for a long time. These law enforcement officers are really too unreasonable. If they want to arrest someone, they should arrest me. How can they arrest my brother? These law enforcement officers do things incoherently. I'm so angry. Cough 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 cough. Cough cough cough. Chu Feiyan, who was at one side, suddenly choked and coughed violently. Oh my God, I can't help it. Everyone also started to talk about it. Chu Feilong's face was still black and he didn't say a word. Everyone, what do you think we should do about this matter? Chu Xiongcheng asked. I think that the law enforcement officers' repeated big actions during this period of time are probably to establish their authority. A chief steward, who had never spoken before, said, Since this is the case, as long as the Chu clan's attitude is lower and we pay some purple crystals, we can bring the 2 young masters back. Chu Xiongcheng nodded and said, Then, who should do this? Everyone lowered their heads. Especially those on Chu Feilong's side. They almost stuffed their heads into their trousers. Everyone knew that anyone else could do it, except for them. As long as they went, they wouldn't be able to return. There was an awkward silence. After a long while, Chu Feilong finally took a step forward and said, Father, I think that if Big Brother goes, it'll be successful. Chu Yang scolded in his heart, You want to use my father to pressure me? Humph. Let's wait and see. Chu Xiongcheng said, Feiling, what do you think about this matter? Chu Feiling said, Since this is the case, I'll go. Chu Xiongcheng nodded, All right. The clan will prepare 300 purple crystals. What do you think? It should be enough. If the law enforcement officers are just showing their attitude, they won't make things too difficult for us. After all, the Chu clan still has some influence in the flat mountain ridge, Chu Feiling said. All right, go and come back quickly. I'll wait for your news here. Chu Xiongcheng waved his hand. Chu Feiling left. Chu Yang sat beside his mother. Everyone was waiting with heavy expressions. After all, it wasn't a good thing for the two young masters of the clan to be detained. The atmosphere was very tense. Chu Feilong looked at Chu Yang with hatred in his eyes, but he didn't say a word. After a long while, the chief steward suddenly said, "Speaking of purple crystals, I thought of something. Young Master Chu Yang was originally in charge of the purple crystals Huichun Hall, and it could be said to be a golden mountain. Now, after the two young masters went there, I heard that they didn't make any progress. Young Master Chu Yang didn't cure anyone. I wonder why." Chu Yang sat beside his mother and said peacefully, "How can there be a divine doctor who can cure all diseases? This chief steward, could it be that you've seen such a divine doctor? If that's the case, please point it out. I'll quickly go and learn from him." The chief steward snorted and said, "There isn't a divine doctor who can cure all diseases. But young Master Chu Yang cured so many people previously. You can't possibly not cure any of them, right? There's obviously something fishy going on." Chu Yang was furious. He stood up and said, "Why don't you go and take a look? What's the point of chattering here? I don't have that ability. You can find someone else." The chief steward was also angered by him. He said coldly, "The purple crystals Huichun Hall is the clan's business. It's supposed to earn purple crystals for the clan. Now, it can't even earn a single purple crystal. What's the use of it?" Chu Yang crossed his legs and said calmly, "This is the problem of management. But I'm not responsible for this. I'm only the chief physician. I'm only responsible for treating patients, not management. Regarding this problem, you should ask the chief steward of the purple crystals Huichun Hall." Chapter 802. Chapter 78. I'm really not showing off after gaining benefits. Chu Feilong looked into Chu Yang's eyes. Chu Yang's eyes were full of calmness and laughter. He was looking at him quietly, and was not affected by the atmosphere in the hall at all. It was as if he was saying, "If you don't kill them, I will kill your son. Don't worry, I'm definitely willing to do so." Chu Feilong clearly realized that in the depths of Chu Yang's eyes, there was a blatant and undisguised cruelty, like that of a vulture in the desert. That was clearly a terrifying killing intent and an unchangeable determination. The two of them were in a stalemate for a long time. Suddenly, Chu Yang smiled and turned his head away. He said softly, "There's no other way. Ah, second uncle, you're swallowing your anger. I can't bear to see you like this. Let's go back and sleep." Chu Feilong's wife cried out, "Feilong you're doing this for our son." Chu Feilong's body trembled violently. He turned his head and saw that his wife's face was full of tears. Footsteps sounded beside him. Chu Yang was about to walk out of the hall. His footsteps were steady, and he was going forward without looking back. His footsteps were light, and his body was straight. He showed his unchangeable determination. Chu Feilong gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He suddenly roared, "You three bastards, how dare you scold me?" He raised his hand and slapped down. The three of them were kneeling on the ground and fighting. When they heard this roar, they immediately felt hopeless. They shouted, "Chu Feilong, you!" But since Chu Feilong had decided to kill them, how could he give them a chance to speak? He slapped them 3 times consecutively. Pa, pa, pa. The 3 heads became like rotten watermelons at the same time. The corpses of the 3 people slowly fell to the ground. Fresh blood flowed out quietly and formed a pool on the ground. It slowly flowed to Chu Feilong's feet, soaking both his feet and his shoes in it. The hall was dead silent. Chu Feilong's body trembled. He raised his head and closed his eyes. He shouted loudly, "Chu Yang, are you satisfied?" Chu Yang had already walked to the door. He slowly turned around as he heard these words. Then, he said in amazement, "Second uncle, they scolded you. It's fine if you reprimanded them. But, why did you kill them? You, don't you think it's too cruel?" Chu Feilong cried out and spat out a mouthful of blood. His chest heaved up and down. Chu Yang said, "Besides, it's fine if you kill them. After all, they were the ones who scolded you first. It's only right that you kill them. But, what does it have to do with me? Why should I say that I'm satisfied?" Chu Feilong closed his eyes, and the muscles on his cheeks trembled. He used
Yang
all of his
said with
cultivation
concern,
to prevent
"Second
himself
uncle,
from
since you've
exploding.
killed them,
He said
you
in a
must be
hoarse
careful.
voice, "This
You must
matter
know
indeed
that when
has
you're
nothing
cutting
to do with
weeds,
you.
you must
That's
dig
right,
up the roots."
second uncle."
When
When these words came out, everyone's heart trembled, and their hearts turned cold. Not only did he force Chu Fei Long to kill, but he also didn't let off the 3 people who were killed. So vicious. Chu Feiling couldn't help but say angrily, Yang, you fool." Yang Ruolan pinched him harshly and whispered, "You're a one-track-minded fool, can't you tell?" Chu Feiling sent a telepathic message in confusion. "What did you see?" Yang Ruolan sighed, "Can't you tell Yang's true intentions?" Even father, who has such a bad temper, didn't say anything. "Why are you shouting?" Chu Fei Ling turned his head to look at Chu Xiongcheng. Indeed, he saw his father frowning and looking at the bloodstains in the hall silently. He frowned and thought for a while. Finally, he said, "Why?" Yang Ruolan was completely speechless. She could only helplessly whisper, "On the surface, it seems that Yang is too cruel. But this is the last chance that Yang left for Chu Fei Long. Do you really think that Yang only wanted to vent his anger? Do you understand how much grievance Yang had to endure to do this?" Yang clipped Chu Feilong's wings and damaged Chu Feilong's prestige. She scattered the hearts of Chu Feilong's people, causing the forces that Chu Feilong had painstakingly built over the years to become suspicious and unstable. This caused Chu Fei Long to be temporarily unable to do anything. If Chu Fei Long could retreat at this time, wouldn't it be a great thing for the Chu clan? If we were to stand in Yang's position, who caused him to lead a wandering life for 18 years? Who caused us to be separated from our family? Who caused him to suffer so much torture? Isn't it all Chu Fei Long? Does Yang want to let him off so easily? Doesn't Yang feel wronged? Yang is doing this for you and father, isn't it? Isn't it so that you won't have to feel guilty and regret for your whole lives because of your brothers? What a fool. Chu Fei Ling wasn't stupid. After thinking for a while, he finally understood. "I see." Chu Fei Long stood there in a daze. He knew that with the death of these 3 people, half of the empire that he had painstakingly built had collapsed. It was inevitable that people would be separated. If he killed the family members of these 3 people, then, it would be equivalent to half of the empire collapsing. Who would work for so unfeeling a master? What if I offend Chu Yang one day and he does the same thing again? Wouldn't my wife and child be done for? However, things had already come to this point. There was no turning back. If he turned back now, those 3 people couldn't be resurrected. His son would still die. Chu Fei Long's lips trembled and he muttered, "Yes, to cut the weeds, we still have to remove the roots." After he said this, everyone's heart became even colder. Chu Yang clapped his hands and laughed. "Second uncle is indeed second uncle. As expected of a hero of a generation, he is able to let go of things easily. Are you satisfied?" Chu Fei Long stared at him. His face seemed to have aged by more than 10 years at this moment. His eyes were also bloodshot. "What, satisfied?" Chu Yang opened his mouth and eyes wide. "Second uncle, I don't understand what you're saying. Please say it more clearly." "Okay." Chu Fei Long knew that Chu Yang wanted him to repeat his conditions. Chu Fei Long gritted his teeth, but he was still helpless. He said, "The purple crystals Huichun Hall is still yours. The clan won't interfere. You don't have to hand over the purple crystals. I'll withdraw everyone. I'll agree to one of your requests. How about that?" Chu Yang said shyly, "How can I?" Chu Fei Long spat out another mouthful of blood. "It was originally yours, and it's still yours now. What's there to be embarrassed about?" Chu Yang said, "But I don't feel right. That would make me seem too selfish." Chu Fei Long closed his eyes tightly and said in a hoarse voice, as if he was about to cry, "Take it that I'm begging you to accept it." In his whole life, when had he been forced to such a state? Chu Fei Long even felt like dying. Chu Yang panicked and said, "Second uncle, don't be like this. What do you want me to do? How can I take it?" "Sigh, since you're begging me, I'll be disrespecting you if I don't accept it. For you, I can only accept it. Everyone, be a witness. The purple crystals Huichun Hall has already returned to the clan, and I didn't say anything about it. But now that you insist on giving it to me, I really can't do anything about it. I really didn't ask for it. Everyone heard it, right? Chu Yang sighed and said it very unwillingly. At the end, he actually said, everyone, don't misunderstand. I'm really not pretending to be obedient. Everyone felt that they were about to spit out blood. Even young Ruolan felt that she was about to spit out blood. Aren't you still pretending to be obedient? You've already done it to the extreme. Since this is the case, I've already received your kind intentions. Then, what about your two younger brothers? Chu Fei Long's chest heaved up and down, and he felt that his heart was about to explode. Second uncle, don't worry. I'll go and risk my life. Sigh, actually, you're not the only one who's distressed. I'm also distressed. Tung Hu and Tung Jiao are my brothers. If the law enforcement officers don't release them, I'll bang my head against the wall and die there. I don't believe that there's no place in this world where I can seek justice. Chu Yang said furiously, I'll threaten them with my life. I don't believe that I can't save my two dear younger brothers. Chu Yang turned around and left, saying, I'll go now. Before he left, he turned around and winked at his mother. Then, he winked again and again. Then, he glanced at his father before he turned around and left. Yong Ruolan's eyes brightened. Seeing his figure disappear outside the door, Chu Fei Long's body trembled and his eyes turned red. Finally, he squatted down and stretched out his hands, as if he wanted to grab something. But after all, he didn't reach out completely. Then, he retracted his hands and covered his face. Chu Xiongcheng sighed deeply and said, Fei Long. Chu Fei Long shouted and stood up suddenly. He spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood. Then, he closed his eyes and his strong body fell backward. The entire hall of the Chu clan was silent. Today's matter had shaken everyone to the core. Chu Fei Long had planned meticulously. He had mobilized his many years of resources to oppress the clan. He had used the power of the entire clan to oppress Chu Yang, who had just arrived at the Chu clan. However, it was directly destroyed by the other party in an extremely barbaric and unreasonable manner, as if a mountain was pressing down on it. Chu Fei Long had planned meticulously to deal with Chu Yang. Step by step, he had gradually forced Chu Yang into a dead end. He had deprived Chu Yang of his rights and wealth. However, Chu Yang's methods were even more dazzling to the eyes and making everyone feel cold in their stomach. There was only one word to describe it: terrifying. It was really too terrifying. Chu Yang didn't care about Chu Fei Long's conspiracy. He didn't even take Chu Fei Long's attacks. But his methods were more violent and direct. You're forcing me? All right. Then, I'll catch you. And I'll make up an excuse to let your 2 subordinates in without any reason. And you don't dare to go and ask for them. If you go, I'll catch you too. You can only come and beg me. But if you come and beg me, I'll make you spit out everything that you've taken. Not only that, I'll make things worse. Chapter 803. Chapter 70. Too soft-hearted or too vicious. Chu Yang had countless ways to retreat from Chu Feilong's coercion. If he couldn't do it, he could just swallow his anger. Even if he gave up the purple crystals Huichun Hall, he was still the young master of the Chu clan. But Chu Yang's coercion towards Chu Feilong had pushed him to the limit. He had forced him to the brink of death. Did you think that I wouldn't let the law enforcement officers take action just because you used the clan to pressure me and keep the clan's internal affairs under control? Not only would I let them take action, but I would also launch an unexpected counterattack. I would force you to apologize to me, lower your head and beg me in front of everyone. I would force you to kill your 3 most capable subordinates in front of everyone. I would force you to split up your own people. I would force you to give up more than half of your years of hard work in an instant. Furthermore, you would lose your prestige in the clan. Otherwise, you would have to wait to collect your son's corpse. Not only would I force you, but I would also anger you to death. I would act obedient in front of you, and you wouldn't be able to do anything about it. I would be arrogant and despotic in front of you, but you wouldn't dare to lose your temper. Such unreasonable and hooligan methods were actually executed in a way that didn't have the slightest bit of anger. In just a few moments, the enemy was defeated. And you would be confused all the way till your death. How could he have such power? The Chu clan had occupied the flat mountain ridge for more than 1,000 years, but they didn't have such power to command the law enforcement officers. But Chu Yang had only been here for a month, and he had changed the entire flat mountain ridge. How did he do it? This was a mystery. Looking at Chu Yang's figure, everyone was deep in thought. Was the Chu clan going to change again? Over the years, the Chu clan had already changed once. That was when Chu Feiling's son disappeared, and Chu Feilong took advantage of the situation to rise up. Now that Chu Feiling's son had returned, it seemed that everything was going back to the original track. Especially those who were originally following Chu Feilong, but were lucky not to be implicated by Chu Yang, they were even more perturbed. They felt as if their heads were no longer on their necks. This time, it was the three of them. Who would it be next time? Everyone could tell that Chu Feilong only had two choices now that things had developed to this stage. The first option was to give up the struggle for power in the clan, and focus on being the second master of the Chu clan. The second option was to fight to the death with Chu Yang, and not stop until one of them was dead. However, Chu Feilong had been in power for so many years. Would he be willing to give up? The answer was almost impossible. However, would he be able to defeat Chu Yang if he continued to fight? Everyone felt a chill run down their spines as they recalled Chu Yang's methods. If Chu Feilong were to continue fighting with Chu Yang, this was something that everyone was not optimistic about. Seeing Chu Feilong lying on the ground, everyone had a complicated look on their faces. After a long while, Chu Feilong finally stood up slowly. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said plainly, "Today's matter is really unexpected." He turned his head and looked at Chu Feiling. His face was cold and stiff, and his eyes were expressionless. After a long while, he said in a low voice, "Big brother, your son is really not bad." Chu Feiling smiled and said, "Although Yang is young and a little willful, he's still a good kid overall." Chu Feilong sighed deeply and said, "Yes. Yang is scheming and resourceful. However, it's a pity that his cultivation has been destroyed. Otherwise, with such a young master in the Chu clan, our future is really limitless." He sighed and walked out. This sentence made the hearts of everyone in the hall beat violently. No matter what kind of backing Chu Yang had, the fact that his cultivation was crippled was an irreparable wound. How could the future successor of a big clan be a scholar? Yang Ruolan pushed Chu Feiling. Chu Feiling said blankly, "What are you doing? Get out." Yang Ruolan sighed and dragged Chu Feiling out. If this old man was half as scheming as Chu Yang, he would have long beaten Chu Feilong into the abyss. Before Chu Yang left, he winked 3 times at Yang Ruolan, indicating that Chu Feilong would definitely lay his hands on the family members of these 3 people. Finally, he glanced at Chu Feiling, indicating that he wanted his father to save them. This was a great opportunity to win over people's hearts. "Everyone, let's disperse." Seeing that the 2 of them had left, Old Master Chu Shengcheng also stood up. He put his hands behind his back and walked back to the inner hall. His heart was filled with both joy and worry. It was actually extremely complicated. As he walked, he finally sighed and muttered to himself, "I hope that Feilong can understand Yang's sincerity and stop stirring up trouble. Then, I can really smile." Chu Feiyang returned to the purple crystals Huachun Hall and realized that Lu'er was lying on the recliner in the courtyard. Her little feet swayed back and forth, causing the recliner to sway back and forth. Her little body undulated on the recliner, and she seemed to be enjoying herself. "Fourth uncle, you're back? How's the matter?" Little Loli asked with concern. "It's hard to explain. Things have actually developed to this stage." Chu Feiyang frowned and recounted everything that had happened in the hall in detail. He frowned and sighed, full of painstaking efforts. "This child." Chu Lu'er frowned her thin eyebrows and looked at Chu Feiyang, but it's also strangely painstaking efforts. Why do you think so? Chu Feiyang was stunned and said, "This time, Yang made use of the law enforcement officer's power to capture Tenghu and Tengjiao indiscriminately. Isn't that overboard? He forced your second uncle to retreat in front of everyone and almost caused your second uncle to vomit blood and die. He even forced your second uncle to kill his own subordinates, causing their blood to splash in the hall. Isn't that overboard?" Chu Feiyang said, but his purpose of doing so is to weaken your second uncle's wings. At the same time, he's giving your second uncle a chance to take a breather and reflect on his mistakes. But it's all for the sake of the clan, your grandfather, and our family. Isn't it a painstaking effort? Chu Feiyang said, although Yang Yang seems to be ruthless, in fact, he's too soft-hearted. But this is a very good thing. Big brother, you're too soft-hearted? Chu Le looked at Chu Feiyang strangely and finally couldn't help but laugh. Fourth uncle, so this is what you think? This? I have to say, you've really surprised me. Chu Feiyang scratched his head and said confusedly, isn't this what you think? Then what do you think? Chu Le thought for a while and finally said, Big brother is going to kill them. Chu Feiyang was shocked, and his eyes widened. Kill? If I didn't guess wrongly, yes. Chu Le thought quickly and said, and, fourth uncle, it's not that big brother is too soft-hearted, but, Chu Le thought for a long time and couldn't think of a good adjective, so she could only say, it's that his heart is as calm as ice and snow. In the eyes of the people he cares about, ice and snow are infinitely beautiful and pure, but in the eyes of his enemies, ice and snow are ruthless and cold. Unfortunately, second uncle belongs to the latter. Chu Feiyang widened his eyes and thought for a long time, but still shook his head. I still don't understand. Chu Le sighed, and black lines appeared on her brows. She said somewhat helplessly, in this case, Big brother has forced second uncle to the point where he has no choice but to let go, and at the same time, he has also forced both parties to the point where they are at each other's throat. I don't understand, fourth uncle, why do you only think positively? Don't think negatively. You must know that in this world, the development of everything is often very different from the good plan. As long as the ugly side of human nature raises its head, the good side of human nature can't be suppressed no matter what. Chu Feiyang said perplexedly, this. I know, but, what does this have to do with anything? Chu Le held her head and moaned, fourth uncle, do you think that second uncle has put in a lot of effort to make his reputation and prestige in the clan far surpass eldest uncles, and even grandpas? After so many years, will he get used to such a life? Of course. Chu Feiyang blurted out. Yes, if someone appears at this time and shatters all his plans, do you think he'll be grateful to that person for giving him a chance to stop? Or will he hate him so much that he won't stop until he's dead? Chu Le continued to ask. Of course, he won't stop until he's dead. Chu Feiyang immediately realized after blurting out these words, and sweat appeared on his forehead. Isn't this the end of it? Chu Le raised her delicate eyebrows. This is what Big Brother means, because he's already seen through second uncle. Chu Feiyang was dumbfounded. This time, Big Brother unreasonably colluded with the law enforcement officers and captured Tenghu and Tengjiao. If he didn't let go of them, he could have used such an unreasonable method to completely defeat second uncle, or even kill him. Since the law enforcement officers could help him unreasonably kill Xiao Yulong and capture Chu Feilong, they could also help him unreasonably kill Chu Feilong. I firmly believe in this point. Because second uncle's status can't be compared to Xiao Yulong's influence, if Xiao Yulong could be killed, what about second uncle? Chu Le analyzed methodically. Chu Feiyang nodded and said, then why doesn't he just get rid of him once and for all? Of course not now. Chu Le smiled faintly and stretched out an almost transparent finger, saying, firstly, Big Brother has just returned to the clan and doesn't understand all the clan affairs. Now, all the clan affairs are in the hands of second uncle. If second uncle dies at this time, the Chu clan will definitely be in a mess. So, Big Brother can't take the risk. So, he can only divide the clan first. After second uncle's power has been broken and scattered, it'll be the best time for him to take action. Secondly, second uncle is only dealing with Big Brother now, and he hasn't dealt with anyone else. If Big Brother kills, it'll appear that he's cold-hearted and intolerant. Moreover, Big Brother is a junior after all, and he still has to bear the crime of killing his own relatives. He'll give others the impression that he's ruthless and heartless. If he wants to make a name for himself, this will be a fatal wound. Thirdly, if second uncle dies at this time, grandfather and eldest uncle will definitely feel guilty and upset for the rest of their lives. After all, Second uncle didn't do anything that's obviously outrageous. Big brother is also worried about this point. Chapter 804. Fourthly, Big Brother had already predicted that second uncle wouldn't give up just like that. So, although it seemed that Big Brother had given second uncle a chance to repent, in fact, that wasn't the case. If second uncle were to do anything or frame Big Brother in the future, Big Brother wouldn't be able to do anything if he was caught by Big Brother. Moreover, the pain in the hearts of first uncle and grandfather would also be reduced. They had already given you a chance. Why are you so stubborn? Or, if you continue to be so stubborn, how long are you going to make trouble? At that time, it might be the time of second uncle's death. And you won't be able to attract much sympathy. Today, you killed your closest subordinate, and tomorrow, you'll harm your own nephew. What's the point of such a person living? At that time, Big Brother wouldn't be a heartless person, but would instead be a person who values friendship and righteousness. Wouldn't it be enough to prove this by sparing him time and time again and giving him a chance? When that time came, Big Brother's reputation in the clan would definitely surpass second uncle's in his prime. For someone who wanted to kill him, he still cared about their feelings and couldn't bear to do it. How could such a person not be sincerely trusted? The unity of the clan would then be formed. Chu Lere looked at Chu Feiyan and smiled quietly. She said, "Fourth uncle, you're an honest person. Let me advise you not to think too much about this matter." Chu Feiyan widened his eyes. He could only hear cold sweat dripping down his body. His heart was filled with endless fear. At this moment, he truly understood what it meant to be a political scheme. Chu Le's layers of analysis had shattered the beautiful fantasy in Chu Feiyan's heart. Reality was too cruel. Such cruelty made Chu Feiyan dumbstruck. Fourth uncle, Big Brother, is a very good person. Chu Le said, but Big Brother is also a very scary person. Chu Feiyan only felt his throat dry up. He asked, "What do you mean?" Chu Le said, "Big Brother is a better person than the gods and Buddhas to those he cares about. He'll do whatever it takes to make these people happy and safe. But to his enemies, he's also an extremely cruel, despicable, and unscrupulous person. He will use all the noble and despicable methods he can think of to beat the enemy to the point of no return. In Big Brother's heart, there is never a need to let go. So, as long as he starts to deal with someone, he will not stop until that person is dead, or until he himself is dead." Chu Feiyan swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva and said, "That makes sense." Chu Le frowned, looking puzzled as she said, "But, fourth uncle, there's something I don't quite understand." Chu Feiyan closed his eyes and seemed to have guessed what she wanted to ask. He asked, "What? Why is the conflict so intense this time?" Chu Le was really puzzled as she asked, "I don't understand this matter. Second uncle has been in charge of the clan for many years, and it's already become a habit. And I can tell that Big Brother isn't a person who's greedy for power, and neither is Big Uncle. If second uncle doesn't do these things, Big Brother and Big Uncle won't fight with him in the future. As for the others, fourth uncle, you're not interested in power. My father hasn't been at home for so many years, and he can't get involved. Second uncle is also an absolutely smart person. Why did he make such a strong enemy for himself?" Chu Le said puzzledly, "And I heard that it started from the day Big Brother came back. It was second uncle who suggested breaking Big Brother's fingers to verify his identity. I don't understand this even more. As a younger brother, he should be very happy that his big brother's child, who has been missing for 18 years, has been found. Why did second uncle have such a reaction? And regarding the matter of seizing the purple crystals Huichun Hall, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that second uncle was behind it. Why did he do this? Fourth uncle, second uncle gives me a feeling that he won't be at ease as long as my big brother is around. I really don't understand." Chu Le looked at Chu Feiyan. Chu Feiyan only felt that this pair of clear eyes were like two sharp arrows shooting at his face. For a moment, the muscles on his face actually twitched a little. I'm only guessing vaguely about this matter." Chu Feiyan said a little hesitantly, "I'm guessing that it might have something to do with your big brother's disappearance 18 years ago. Chu suddenly gasped, "Fourth uncle, you're saying, sh." Chu Feiyan covered Chu small mouth and looked around, saying, "I'm only guessing." Chu whimpered and struggled out of his hand, saying, "But that's your second brother. If you don't have deep suspicions, how can you suspect him like this?" Chu Feiyan's face turned ugly. He wasn't the only one who had such guesses about what had happened back then. Old Master Chu also had the same guesses. But everyone had a tacit understanding and didn't say anything. Not many people knew that Chu Feiling had accompanied his wife back to her parents' home. And Chu Feilong's actions back then were far less stable than now. Most importantly, if anything happened to Chu Feilong would be the one who would benefit the most. But so what if he knew? So what if he suspected? He couldn't possibly not only lose his grandson, but also execute his son at that time, causing the entire Chu clan to fall apart, right? So there's such a reason. No wonder. Chu muttered, "If that's the case, then, not only does second uncle intend to deal with big brother, but big brother also has the intention to deal with second uncle. This means that big brother already knows about this matter. Because when he just woke up, he gave second uncle a show of strength. This isn't something that uncle and nephew would do after a long separation." Chu Feiyan thought for a while and couldn't help but feel terrified. Chu Le's words hit the nail on the head. Yes, this matter was very obvious. Chu Feilong dealing with Chu Yang didn't seem like something that uncle and nephew would do. But Chu Yang's reaction was definitely not like that of an uncle and nephew reuniting after a long separation. But everyone was thinking that Chu Yang had no choice but to retaliate. But even if he had no choice, how could a nephew who had just returned be so ruthless to his second uncle? So many people's understanding couldn't be as clear as a little girl's. Chu Feiyan was extremely ashamed. If that's the case, then I'm afraid that big brother and second uncle will have to fight to the death sooner or later. Chu Le's little face became worried. Chu Feiyan lowered his head sadly. He only felt as if his heart was being pressed by a huge rock. The words brothers fighting against each other flooded his heart, making him so heavy that he couldn't breathe. Fourth uncle, if big brother and second uncle really fight to the death, which side will you stand on? Chu tilted her head slightly and looked at Chu Feiyan. There was a meaningful look on her young face. Which side will I stand on? Chu Feiyan was at a loss. On one side was his second brother, who had the same mother as him. On the other side was his nephew whom he admired the most and respected, the son of his big brother. Which side can I stand on? Chu Feiyan was dumbfounded. After a long while, he said dryly, "If that really happens, I might as well die first. Even if I die, I don't want to see the scene of brothers fighting against each other. But, even if you die, that scene is unavoidable." Chu Le's clear eyes looked at Chu Feiyan. She was actually a little aggressive. "Then whose side will you stand on?" Chu Feiyan asked. "Me." Chu smiled. "In terms of benefits, second uncle once embezzled the purple crystals that he used to buy medicine for me, but big brother cured my illness." Chu Feiyan was stupefied. "From a personal point of view, apart from my father and mother, even my two brothers kept a respectful distance from me since I was young. Second uncle has never hugged me since I was old enough to understand things, but big brother often hugged me in his arms. The way second uncle looked at me was like looking at a bottomless pit that couldn't be filled with money. But when big brother looked at me, his eyes were as warm and affectionate as my father's. It made me indulge in it and feel dependent and happy." Chu turned her head and said softly, "Fourth uncle, guess which side I'll stand on." Chu Feiyan didn't need to guess, because the answer was already there. "If big brother wants to go up the mountain of swords, I'll go up with him. If big brother wants to be a bandit, I'll cut down the trees and block the way for him. If big brother becomes a devil, then I'll definitely become a witch." Chu smiled. "This has nothing to do with gratitude, and has nothing to do with our relationship as siblings. It has nothing to do with my illness. It's because big brother is the only person other than my parents who is genuinely good to me. Fourth uncle, you're also very good to me, but you have misgivings. Big brother treats me well without any misgivings. So I also have no misgivings when I'm good to him." Chu Feiyan's face turned red and then white. He stood there in disappointment and was speechless for a long time. He only felt that the wind that blew past his face had a tinge of bleak autumn. It was autumn. That afternoon, Chu Yang still hadn't returned. Chu Feilong finally couldn't take it anymore. He knew that Chu Yang was waiting for his news. If he didn't kill the family members of those 3 people, Chu Yang probably wouldn't bring his son back. Under the urging of his wife, Chu Feilong drank 3 bowls of hard liquor in a row with red eyes. Then, he picked up his big knife and went out. But when he was about to kill them, Chu Feilong coincidentally saw him. He saved the innocent family members of those 3 people from Chu Feilong's knife. Chu Feilong was almost mad with anger. Because of one sentence from Chu Feilong, the whole thing became out of control. Second brother, you've already killed the 3 of them. Do you really want to kill all of them? This sentence was taught to Chu Feilong by Yang Ruolan. She even gave him a death order. If he didn't say it, he could forget about getting into bed with her in the future. She knew that with Chu Feilong's honest and affectionate personality, he wouldn't do or say such things unless he was forced to a certain extent. Chapter 805. When Chu Yang came back, he brought back Chu Tonghu and Chu Tongjiao. Net the look in everyone's eyes changed when they saw the 2 men return with bruises all over their bodies. Young master really has the ability to make law enforcement officers lower their head. Of course, as usual, Chu Yang complained about how he threatened them with death, how he begged them, how he was willing to sacrifice himself for them, and so on. All in all, young Master Chu went through a lot of hardships and went through 18 levels of hell before he managed to save his 2 dear younger brothers. The Chu clansmen all scoffed at these words. This guy is addicted to taking advantage of others. Chu Yang personally sent the 2 brothers to Chu Feilong's courtyard. Of course, as usual, he complained about his hardships again. Before he left, he even said to Chu Feilong, second uncle, if the 2 younger brothers have nowhere else to go, they can continue to be shopkeepers in the Purple Crystals Huichun Hall. Let's work together to build a famous Purple Crystals Huichun Hall. Chu Feilong gritted his teeth and said, thank you for your care. Chu Yang smiled from ear to ear, second uncle, what are you talking about? We're a family. Chu Feilong's face turned black on the spot. Divine Dr. Chu returned to the Purple Crystals Huichun Hall and continued to work. Of course, the business continued to improve. Then, good news came one after another like snowflakes. Chu Yang was so happy in his heart that he almost wanted to sing a song. In the big clans, the Xiao clan and Li clan had already started a war. All the businesses of the Li clan were banned in the Xiao clan's territory. Friction between the 2 clans kept happening. It was said that there were already casualties on both sides. Gradually, the situation escalated to the point of a big fight. The 7th master of the Zhuge clan, Zhuge Yunwu, led the army and gradually advanced from the southernmost part of the continent, oppressing the Li clan. At the same time, the Shi clan started to take action. The Ling clan also started to take action secretly. The latest chapter of the Holy Hall. The clans took action immediately. Except for the Yi clan and a few other clans, a storm was brewing in the entire continent. The law enforcement officers sat on the mountain and watched the tigers fight. This was one of the good news. The second good news was that the elixirs that Shuo Xinliang and Qin Baoshan needed would arrive in another 3 days. This made Shuo Xinliang and Qin Baoshan very excited. Of course, Divine Dr. Chu was even more excited. The third piece of good news was that the news that 4th Elder Chu had sent to the Blood Pairs Hall had basically all been received. Moreover, the whereabouts of the flower in the place where the poison was planted had been found. As for the other flavors, it was expected that they would recover in a short period of time. This news made Chu Yang heave a long sigh of relief. However, it was said that the flower was found by the famous Blood Pairs organization, Jinjian Hall. Although the whereabouts of the flower were known, it would take another month for the other party to send it over. Moreover, the price offered was even more outrageous. Looking at the high prices, Divine Dr. Chu felt that he was earning money too slowly. Just 1 flower and 1 medicinal herb cost 30,000 purple crystal. Divine Dr. Chu had worked so hard for such a long time, but he only managed to save a little more than 10,000 purple crystals. This made Chu Yang gnash his teeth in anger. This damned Jinjian Hall, is this king of hell a fat pig to be slaughtered? He finally understood. In this world, even if you want to kill someone, you still need money. Such a strong poison could actually be sold at a high price of 30,000 purple crystals. This really makes me speechless. Divine Dr. Chu gnashed his teeth and scolded the black-hearted blood pairs and the blood pairs hall. At the same time, his eyes lit up and his heart moved. Being a blood pair seems to earn money very quickly. If I can take on 5 such missions a year, I won't have to do anything else. There was another piece of good news. The law enforcement master of the Southeast region, the head of the law enforcement organization, was on his way here. Firstly, it was because the Southeast region was in a bigger mess. Secondly, the Southeast region's Xiao clan, the Northwest region's Shi clan and the Li clan were in a bigger mess here. Thirdly, it was because Shuo Xinliang urged him every few days. The law enforcement master really didn't understand what had happened to his right-hand man, so he had to come over to take a look. Net 7 *. During this period of time, the Xiao clan had also started to deploy troops from various big and small clans in the entire Southeast region. Waves after waves of troops were sent to the front line where the war had yet to start. Fortunately, the flat mountain ridge was located in a remote area, and it wasn't their turn yet. But the 3 big clans had already started to panic. Chu Yang was looking forward to it. After all, King of Hell Chu was still thinking about the 5th fragment of the sword. Thinking of this, the King of Hell Chu sighed again. My memory is only up to the 5th fragment. As for where the remaining 4 fragments are, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. While Divine Dr. Chu was treating patients and collecting purple crystals, he would stroll to the Blood Pairs Hall to take a look at the rewards and missions there when he was free. Then, he would shake his head and return to the Purple Crystals Huichun Hall like a defeated rooster. He was speechless for a long time. The weakest reward for killing people was actually an 8th stage martial monarch. The price wasn't low. As long as the head was brought back, the reward would be 2,000 purple crystals. Moreover, the blood pairs didn't care about the handling fees and other miscellaneous things, but Minister Chu could only look at the ocean and sigh. I thought that I had found a source of income, but an 8th stage martial monarch is really too much of a scam. Even if I recover my strength, I'll only be a 1st or 2nd stage martial emperor. If I go, I'll only be giving food to this one-legged thief, right? If the sword spirit were to do it, of course, it wouldn't be a problem. But if I were to ask the sword spirit to do it after I've recovered my cultivation, how would that be appropriate? When would he be able to truly improve his strength? And it's only 2,000 purple crystals, so little. It turns out that to be a blood pair, one also needs to have super strong strength. Sighing was one thing, but Minister Chu still paid 100 purple crystals and took back a copy of all the rewards for blood pairs. When he was free, he would take it as a science lesson. After all, the rewards were all ferocious guys. If he met them, it was one thing if he couldn't defeat them, but if he could recognize them and run away in time, it would be worth the price of the information. And if he was lucky, he might meet a half-dead guy and chop off his head to earn purple crystals. Yes, Chu Yang was really daydreaming. I've always been prepared for a rainy day. During this period of time, Chu Feilong didn't do anything. After all, he was forced too hard that day and his vitality was greatly damaged. He had to stay at home to recuperate. But Chu Yang noticed that Chu Feilong's skinny and shriveled confidant was no longer by his side. Chu Yang didn't know where he went. That person was an expert that Chu Feilong recruited from outside. It was said that he was at the peak of the martial monarch level and close to the martial saint level. Chu Yang had always been doubtful about this. What's Chu Feilong's cultivation? How could he recruit such an expert? Why? Although he knew that the other party didn't go missing to assassinate him, Chu Yang still strengthened his vigilance. If he wasn't wrong, Chu Feilong should have sent him out to ask for help, or he had to guard against him. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Shuo Xinliang and Qin Baoshan sent people to invite Divine Dr. Chu to the law enforcement hall with smiles on their faces. They said that they wanted to invite Divine Dr. Chu to have a meal, make a house call and check on the condition of their family members. Divine Dr. Chu understood tacitly. He said a few words, took a medicine furnace and left. When he saw Sho Xinliang and Qin Baoshan, Divine Dr. Chu naturally asked excitedly, "You're here?" "We're here." The two beamed with joy. "That's great." Divine Dr. Chu beamed with joy. Congratulations to the two brothers. Now that the medicine had arrived, the chronic illness of the two brothers could finally be completely cured. "I'm absolutely sure about this." The two beamed with joy at once. "I've brought the medicine furnace." "Where's the medicine?" Chu Yang asked enthusiastically. "It's in the underground secret warehouse," Sho Xinliang laughed. "Let's go." The three of them opened the secret passage and went down in a single file. Seeing the medicinal herbs, Chu Yang couldn't help but praise. Even the sword spirit in the space of tribulation also praised. The quality of the medicinal herbs was really good in the upper three heavens. And they were well preserved. Not a bit of medicinal efficacy was lost. It was enough to show that they were all experts. "My two brothers, you have to protect me while I cultivate. Wait outside the door. Remember, no matter what happens, don't let anyone in," Chu Yang said solemnly. "If I'm distracted, all my previous efforts will be wasted." The two nodded solemnly. "We naturally know about this." "Then we'll have to trouble you." Chu Yang nodded and reminded them again, "This refining process will take 2 to 3 days. Brothers, don't be anxious. Just prepare some food and water for me. No matter what movements I make inside, as long as I don't open the door, don't open the door. Once the medicinal efficacy is lost, you'll be finished. Remember, remember." The two looked nervous and nodded repeatedly. Sho Xinliang went out like a gust of wind and came back with a big bag of food and 7 to 8 bags of water. Chu Yang took over these things and entered the secret chamber. With a bang, he shut the two of them outside. Sho Xinliang and Qin Baoshan looked at each other and saw the joy in each other's eyes. Heavens, I finally have hope. If the two of them knew that they were originally very hopeful, and that all the hopelessness was caused by their enthusiastic and busy Divine Dr. Chu inside, cough cough cough. After Chu Yang went in, he waved his hand and dozens of medicinal herbs on the ground entered the space. He said to the sword spirit, "Hurry up and refine the medicine. You know better than me what kind of medicine I need." As for the jade ganoderma and heavenly jade mystical liquid, they were of course carefully hidden by the sword spirit. "I didn't expect such a big piece. It seems that there'll still be more than half of it left after Chula Er's illness is cured. This is really great." In the space, the sword spirit rolled his eyes. He didn't dare to delay and hurriedly started to refine the medicine. One must know that Minister Chu was extremely dissatisfied with the fact that he didn't have any cultivation. It's better for him to recover his cultivation quickly. Besides, to recover his cultivation, he needed to go into seclusion. And for seclusion, he needed an absolutely safe place. And in the entire flat mountain ridge, was there any safer place than the law enforcement officer's secret warehouse? Not to mention that there were two great experts guarding outside the door. Chapter 806. Chu Yang had long made up his mind to recover his cultivation here. He wanted to completely calm down his spirit and digest the soul of the first tribulation swordmaster who almost brought him to hell. He wanted to turn the soul into his own strength. And he couldn't wait to do it. While the sword spirit was busy, Chu Yang didn't stay idle. He only used an hour to make a pile of black refined medicine. These were prepared for Sho Xinliang and Qin Baoshan. The latest chapter of the Holy Hall. Chu Yang could easily solve the two's injuries and the so-called chronic illness. But Chu Yang was a little worried that Qin Baoshan could use this opportunity to advance his cultivation because of the jade clover ganoderma. After thinking for a long time, he finally asked the sword spirit to refine a medicine that could increase his cultivation by 20 years. The sword spirit's actions were very fast. In less than 2 hours, the medicine that Chu Yang needed was already refined. Under the sword spirit's superb refining skills, this lump of medicinal liquid showed an amber-like purple color. It was so clear that it seemed to be able to reflect the stars in the sky. It was half solid and half liquid, and emitted a tempting fragrance. Sho Xinliang and Qin Baoshan, who were waiting outside the door, couldn't help but frown when they smelled the strong fragrance of the medicine. They were overjoyed. This speed is really fast. The fragrance has spread out so quickly. Chu Yang opened his mouth and swallowed this lump of medicinal liquid without any hesitation. After only a quarter of an hour, the medicinal effect began to explode in his body. Then, it was as if he had swallowed a burning furnace. His entire body turned red with a whoosh, close to a purplish black. Countless beads of sweat emerged from his head and body. In his meridians, the power of the tribulation sword was activated at the same time. In his meridians, the cultivation that had been cut off began to roll and shake. It moved slowly along the original route, gradually moving faster and faster. In the end, it started to gallop like a wild horse. The power of the tribulation sword in his meridians turned around and joined this mighty torrent. In his dantian, his origin energy surged. When the torrent passed through his dantian again, he joined in without hesitation. The three parties joined forces and circulated a cycle in Chu Yang's meridians at lightning speed. Then, they suddenly changed their course and pushed Chu Yang's cultivation to the first grade of Emperor level at an earth-shattering speed. It seemed as if the barrier between the first grade of Emperor level and the King level didn't exist at all. Then, it continued to increase and gradually reached the peak of first grade Emperor level. Then, it didn't stop at all and crashed into the meridian barrier between first and second grade with a loud bang. With just one collision, a hole was opened in the barrier. Then, with a thought from Chu Yang, the torrent-like energy flow rampaged through the barrier. Net, it condensed and condensed in the meridians, and when all the energy surged in, it also condensed and took shape. It actually took the shape of a sword. Sword Emperor. Chu Yang's body suddenly emitted a sharp sword aura. The secret chamber was filled with sword aura. The sword-like energy flow was activated again. The sword tip of the calamity sword whistled happily and occupied the position of the sword tip. The sword edge, sword blade, and sword guard all returned to their positions at the same time. The long sword in the meridians slowly turned transparent black. Only the tip of the sword emitted a silver light. In the calamity space, the sword spirit looked at all of this quietly and sighed. It's really different from the previous 8 masters of the calamity sword. This should be the highest form of the calamity sword, everywhere. The sword in the meridians trembled slightly, and then began to move slowly, faster and faster. In the end, it actually turned into a shadow. It seemed to be the same as before, but it was fundamentally different. The long sword moved through the meridians at an astonishing speed. Every time it made a round, it grew a little bigger. After 10 rounds, the sword tip took the initiative to change its direction again, and rushed to another meridian barrier. Boom! Chu Yang clearly heard the sound of a mountain collapsing at this moment, and the world collapsing at this moment. His whole body trembled, and blood spurted out of his 7 apertures at the same time. However, after that, it was completely comfortable, completely unobstructed. Third grade Sword Emperor. Before he had time to be surprised, there was another silent explosion in his head. Chu Yang spurted out blood again. Then, waves of unfamiliar information and data flowed into his mind quickly and clearly like a clear stream, entering his heart. Those were the complete memories of the first master of the Calamity Sword. Chu Yang was stiff on the ground like a dead person, but his brain was absorbing these precious memories hungrily. Inside, there was a legend that dominated the heavens. Every detail was recorded. All the wonderful techniques that he had never seen or heard of before swarmed into Chu Yang's mind at this moment, and were gradually organized and categorized. What Chu Yang was most interested in was that there was a technique called Thousand Phantom Technique. Not only could it change his appearance and figure at will, but it could also perfectly conceal the fluctuations of his aura. If you want others to know what cultivation level you are at, the Thousand Phantom Technique will display a certain level of chi activity according to your wishes. This kind of technique made Chu Yang very interested. The sword energy in the meridians was still moving violently. Chu Yang had already lost his consciousness, and could only accept it passively. His only obsession now was to charge, break through the barrier, improve his strength. If he was still conscious and could look inside himself, he would find that his meridians were slowly swelling and widening, with strong flexibility. The power of the golden bloodroot that he had eaten in Beyond the Heavens sect was fully developed at this moment. As his meridians widened, the shape of the sword gradually became stronger and stronger, and its speed became faster and faster. It became more and more urgent. Chu Yang gritted his teeth and commanded the sword energy in his meridians with his mind. He roared in his heart, "Break!" Finally, the sword hit the meridian's barrier again. Boom! Chu Yang's body suddenly shook again, and blood spurted out of his 7 orifices again. All the pores on his body also spurted out fine blood like a drizzle. It did not break open. The sword in his meridians retreated. It followed the previous path again, and after another 10 circulations, it hit the barrier again without hesitation. Again, Chu Yang suddenly closed his eyes. Boom! The barrier did not move, and it was as firm as a rock. Chu Yang's body trembled violently on the ground, and his whole body bounced up 3 feet from the ground, and fell down again. There was already a pool of blood below him. The sword retreated, and it went on the original path again and again. It did not stop at the 10th time. After 300 circulations, Chu Yang once again launched an attack. If he broke through, he would be a 4th stage sword sovereign. 3rd stage and 4th stage were 2 completely different realms. He attacked again. The absolutely brutal attack caused Chu Yang's meridians to crack a little, but the barrier still did not move at all. The power of the elixirs in his body automatically repaired his meridians, and then the sword energy began to move again, the 5th time, the 7th time, the 9th time. The sword spirit opened his eyes wide, and his face was full of disbelief. This experience was definitely better than the torture of death by 1,000 cut. Even an expert would give up and wait for the next opportunity if he could not break through once. But Chu Yang endured this pain again and again, and he attacked 15 times in a row. The sword spirit followed the tribulation sword and went through 8 tribulation sword masters, but he had never seen any tribulation sword master with such ruthlessness and tenacity. Chu Yang was ruthless to his enemies, but he was even more ruthless to himself. On the 18th time, a crack finally appeared on the strong meridian barrier. It split radially in all directions. The 10th time, Chu Yang roared in his heart, and he controlled the sword energy to hit it fiercely. Boom! He suddenly understood. The energy sword rushed in with a whoosh, sweeping away the original obscurity and becoming bright. Gradually, the entire passage was opened up. Then, the energy continued to roar and circulate for 10 cycles before it finally stopped and stabilized in the Dantian. 4th stage sword sovereign, primary stage. The moment Chu Yang broke through, he fainted, and lay on the ground silently. The sword spirit looked at Chu Yang fainting on the ground, and couldn't help but ask himself a question. If Chu Yang didn't faint, would he continue to attack the 5th stage? After thinking for a long time, there was no answer. This was a complete lunatic. 2 days of time quietly flowed by. There was no movement in the secret chamber. Sho Xinliang and Qin Baoshan were like ants on a hot pan. But when they thought of Chu Yang's instructions, they didn't dare to go in and take a look. What's going on? I'm so anxious. In these 2 days, the outside world was also restless. There seemed to be many outsiders entering the flat mountain ridge, and they disappeared after entering, just like water droplets melting into the sea. In a tea house, in a quiet room, Chu Feilong was tasting tea quietly, as if he was waiting for something. From time to time, he raised his head and looked at the door. In his eyes, there was an unconcealable desire, and a trace of nervousness. With a whoosh, a figure stood at the door. It was Chu Feilong's skinny and shriveled monarch guard. Chu Feilong, the 13th master, has come personally. The skinny and shriveled guard actually called out Chu Feilong's name for the first time. This didn't seem like a guard talking to his master, but more like a master talking to his subordinate. Chu Feilong didn't feel offended at all. Instead, he stood up in surprise. The 13th master has come personally. This is really. Let me go out and welcome him. No need. A gloomy voice sounded. As if it appeared out of thin air, 5 more people appeared at the door silently. The first person was a man who seemed to be in his 30s. His face was fair and clean, and he could even be said to be handsome. Only his eyes were gloomy and cold, which destroyed his temperament. His eyes seemed to be flickering with ghostly fire all the time. Yi Wubo. He was the 13th master of the Yi clan, which was ranked first in the heavens. People called him 13th Yi. If Chu Failing was here, he would definitely understand the reason for his misfortune and the assassination attempts of the Yi clan's martial emperors in the three heavens. The source was here. Chapter 807. Part 7, Chapter 83, Crisis. After listening to Chu Feilong's words, Yi Wubo frowned tightly. A layer of frost could almost be scraped off from his face. Holy Hall Chu Feilong, you're not joking with me, right? Yi Wubo looked at Chu Feilong maliciously. The ghost fire in his eyes flickered. You're saying that a kid who didn't return home for 18 years and doesn't have any foundation in the clan, a cripple whose cultivation has been abolished, has become the biggest obstacle to your plan? Do you think I'm a fool? Chu Feilong sighed deeply and said helplessly, 13th Master, I know you don't believe me, but this is the truth. Yi Wubo frowned tightly. The ghost fire in his eyes flickered. After a long time, he said, that kid is your nephew? Chu Yang. Chu Feilong nodded and said, this kid is slippery and vicious. He doesn't even recognize his own kin. Yi Wubo smiled and said coldly, he's drifted outside for 18 years. It's normal that he doesn't recognize his own kin. I find such a person pleasing to the eye. Chu Feilong smiled bitterly. What's his teacher's background? His past experience? Yi Wubo asked. Chu Feilong shook his head, I don't know anything. But he doesn't seem to have been taught by a famous teacher. Even though his cultivation has been abolished, no one has stood up for him. This sentence was full of deep meaning. Yi Wubo raised the corner of his mouth and revealed a disdainful expression. He said, Chu Feilong, I have high hopes for you. You should know that those who achieve great things shouldn't be bothered by trifles. Only a ruthless and decisive person can be called a hero of the generation. Chu Feilong revealed a ruthless look and said, but it's a pity that I'm the center of attention in the Chu clan now. And that kid seems to be guarding against something and has been following my fourth brother around. It's not easy for me to kill him. Yi Wubo snorted. The ghost fire in his eyes flickered. After pondering for a while, he said, Old Third Ma, go and find out the background of this Chu Yang. If it's convenient, kill him on the spot. It was obvious that he doubted Chu Feilong's words. However, even if he doubted Chu Feilong, he still had to see it with his own eyes, lest he wronged Chu Feilong. After all, Chu Feilong was a very important chess piece in his plan. Moreover, Old Third Ma was the weakest among the 4 guards he brought with him. He was only at the 3rd stage of the martial monarch realm, but he was quick-witted, observant, eloquent, and resourceful. When he was outside, he didn't have to worry about anything. He was a rare assistant. Wang 7 asterisk, and Chu Yang was just an ordinary person whose cultivation had been crippled. Sending him out would definitely be a piece of cake. Behind him, the skinny Old Third Ma agreed and asked Chu Feilong about Chu Yang's appearance in detail. Finally, he asked Chu Feilong to draw a portrait of Chu Yang. It had to be said that Chu Feilong's drawing skills were really good. He painted Chu Yang so vividly that it was almost as if he could walk out of the painting. Old Third Ma looked at it for a while and revealed a cruel smile. He rolled up the portrait and said confidently, 13th Master, don't worry. With a laugh, he turned around and floated out of the door. Chu Feilong was a little worried and said, 13th Master, that little guy is very slippery. And I don't know how he got acquainted with Sho Xinliang. It's not very safe for Old Third Ma to go. The ghostly fire in Yi Wubo's eyes flickered. He tapped the table lightly with his fingers and said lightly, I'm here to take charge of the southeast region. What I need are elite soldiers. If Old Third Ma can't even deal with a cripple who has lost his cultivation, then, what's the use of keeping him? As he spoke, his ghostly fire-like eyes seemed to sweep across Chu Feilong's face intentionally or unintentionally. His eyes were cold and malicious, and a faint flame flickered. Chu Feilong's heart trembled, and he didn't dare to speak again. This sentence was obviously a warning to him. Because he himself couldn't even deal with a cripple who had lost his cultivation, Chu Yang stayed in the secret warehouse for 3 days. On the 3rd day, he was already practicing the 1000 phantom technique. The damage to his meridians caused by breaking through these few days was already healed by him using a large amount of vitality spring water. But he needed a reason to recover his strength suddenly. And Chu Yang obviously didn't want to fabricate any reason. So, he simply used the Thousand Phantom technique to cover up his aura directly. With his current cultivation of a 4th stage Sword Sovereign, the speed of practicing this technique was indeed very fast. In just one day, he was able to use it flexibly and reach the 3rd stage of the Thousand Phantom technique, Thousand Phantoms of Aura. Although he still couldn't change his cultivation level at will, he could already completely cover up his aura. The latest chapter of the Holy Hall. Sho Xinliang and Qin Baoshan had been waiting anxiously for a long time. In these 3 days, they only had one feeling: each day felt like a year. In the end, the 2 dignified monarch-level experts couldn't help but pray, "But please, please refine the medicine. This is our only hope." Finally, when they saw the door open, the 2 of them couldn't wait and rushed in at the same time. Inside, the sound of heavy and slow footsteps could be heard. It was as if the person walking used up all the strength in his body with every step. Finally, the person moved towards the door. The 2 of them stretched their necks and looked around with their hearts in their throats. Finally, Chu Yang appeared. At the moment when they saw Chu Yang, the 2 of them were inexplicably shocked and couldn't help but feel distressed. The current Chu Yang was absolutely too horrible to look at. His clothes were ragged, his face was pale, and there were traces of blood at the corners of his mouth. His body was also stained with blood. His hair was disheveled, his eyes were lifeless, and his body was swaying. Every step he took, his legs would twitch as if they had no bones. He almost crawled to the door. The 2 of them looked at Chu Yang in shock and couldn't say anything for a while. Chu Yang's extremely tired eyes suddenly lit up when he saw the 2 of them. He revealed a comforting smile and murmured in a voice that was almost inaudible, "The medicine is done. Finally, finally." His body went soft and he was about to fall down. Qin Baoshan reacted quickly. He stepped forward and hugged Chu Yang. He called anxiously, "Little brother, little brother." Chu Yang weakly forcibly opened his lifeless eyes. He said as if he would faint at any time, "Quick, quick, take out the medicine, in my arms, or if I fall. I'll. Sho Xinliang hurriedly took out 3 bags of medicine from Chu Yang's arms and held them tightly in his arms. He asked with concern, "Little brother, it's been hard on you. Are you okay?" Chu Yang finally fell into a semicoma. His arms drooped down and he murmured, "We take care of each other, for the 2 of you, it's worth it." After saying that, he really fainted. The 2 of them were so excited that their eyes were brimming with tears. What a good little brother. For the 2 of us, he had obviously sacrificed half of his life. He's so affectionate and righteous. He's so affectionate. He's so righteous. He's so. The 2 of them simply didn't know how to describe it. They carried Chu Yang carefully and rushed into Sho Xinliang's bedroom like a gust of wind. They carefully placed him on the bed. Chu Yang started to snore as soon as he was put down. "He's really too tired." Qin Baoshan sighed with emotion. "I really don't know how much hardship he's suffered and how much energy he's expended in these few days. It seems that refining medicine this time isn't easy." Sho Xinliang had the same feeling, and said, "I heard that thousands of years ago, some senior pharmacists would often exhaust their lives in order to concoct and refine medicines. Now I know that the rumors are actually true." Qin Baoshan nodded solemnly. Immediately, Sho Xinliang gave out a series of instructions. Use the best tonics, the best medicine and the best doctors to quickly recover the little brother's body. Sho Xinliang's repeated instructions caused the entire law enforcement hall of the flat mountain ridge to be in chaos. When Chu Yang woke up, it was already night time. He seemed to have recovered quite a bit. He even opened his mouth to praise, "Which divine doctor treated me like this? I thought that I'd have to lie down for a few days. I didn't expect to recover so much in such a short time." Then he said gratefully, "It must be the 2 elder brothers who spent a lot of effort, right?" Sho Xinliang and Qin Baoshan felt honored and ashamed at once. They rubbed their hands and smiled. "As long as little brother is fine, we should do whatever we want." Chu Yang's eyes flashed and he seemed to be in deep thought. He smiled and said, "I'll remember it." The two of them smiled and nodded. Immediately, Chu Yang took out the medicine. Without any delay, he carefully instructed the two of them on how to take the medicine, and what kind of reaction they would have after taking the medicine. He also instructed them to look for him when they had any reaction, and then he would treat them himself. When Chu Yang walked out of the law enforcement hall, it was already the next morning. Actually, Sho Xinliang and Qin Baoshan were completely fine in the middle of the night. Moreover, Qin Baoshan's cultivation had increased by 20 years, and he had finally broken through the bottleneck of the third stage of the martial monarch level. He had successfully advanced to the seventh stage of the martial monarch level. Chu Yang was also shocked by this advancement. Because after Qin Baoshan's cultivation had broken through the bottleneck, the mighty airflow in his meridians flowed endlessly, and his cultivation had actually doubled. Chu Yang also finally knew why it would be more and more difficult for experts to advance when they had cultivated to a certain level. That's because the martial power would increase by several folds if he were to advance by one level. This was simply inconceivable for Chu Yang at his current level. Qin Baoshan's eyes were brimming with tears. His chronic illness was gone, and he had advanced to the next level. This was something that he didn't even dare to dream of, but it had been realized by Chu Yang. At this moment, Qin Baoshan felt that whatever he did for his little brother was worth it. Like Sho Xinliang, whose chronic illness had also been cured, he didn't let Chu Yang go back no matter what when he saw that it was already late. He served divine Dr. Chu as if he was his ancestor, and stayed in the law enforcement hall for a night. Only in the morning did he send Chu Yang out respectfully. Chu Yang walked on the road in the early morning. He looked at the clear dewdrops on the weeds by the roadside and pondered. He had made use of these two people, and these two people weren't really good people. But as his contact with them deepened, he suddenly discovered a problem. No matter if they were good or bad people, but many of them were sexual lovers. At the very least, as a martial artist's persistence, as a human's brilliance, as a basic gratitude, Chu Yang didn't know what he was thinking about as he walked. He shook his head, smiled bitterly, and quickened his pace. At this moment, his divine soul suddenly trembled. An extreme sense of crisis made Chu Yang's hair stand on end. He suddenly stopped his footsteps and still maintained his posture just now. He lowered his head and seemed to be in deep thought, but his divine sense spread out like an inescapable net. He couldn't understand some people's doubts. I can still update continuously when I'm traveling. Do I have to be lazy and ask for a leave of absence after I return home? Then what's the point of my persistence? 40 minutes after he called his editor to ask for a leave of absence, he received a call. He hurriedly wrote and uploaded his story. Then, he saw the doubts. A brother from Shanghai said, "It's so strange. Why is there no power cut here? This reason is too lame." Then, I was speechless for a long time. I could only say, I'm in the suburbs of a small town, not Shanghai. I'm poor and have no money to buy a house in Shanghai. I've also relaxed these few days. My monthly votes have also slipped out of the top 10. Tomorrow, I can only start to work hard. Here, I sincerely ask for monthly votes and recommendation votes in advance. Chapter 808. Although Chu Yang was only a fourth-stage sword sovereign now, after he swallowed and integrated the divine soul of the first tribulation sword master, his divine soul and divine sense were truly the strongest in the world. His divine sense was like an inescapable net, silently gushing out for thousands of feet. Chu Yang closed his eyes, and it was as if he could see with his own eyes. On the top of a tall tower in the distance, a thin and small figure in white was floating on the top of the tower. In the early morning sky, he was like a formless ghost. Net he seemed to be waiting and sizing up the gate of the law enforcement hall, but he didn't go near. At this moment, his eyes were looking in Chu Yang's direction. Although Chu Yang lowered his head, he only felt a sharp pain on his head, as if it was pierced by a sharp needle. Chu Yang was shocked. He could still feel the murderous intent from so far away. His eyes were still so sharp even though he was so far away. Then, this person was at least a monarch-level expert. Chu Yang lowered his head and stayed where he was, like a sentimental teenager looking at a bunch of swaying wildflowers by the roadside. His eyes were focused and affectionate. But in his heart, a monstrous flame of war suddenly rose up. With the beautiful morning light has recovered, and couldn't bear to disturb the sleeping flowers and trees. Compared to the other party, my strength is far from his. He walked out of Wujing Town. But I still don't know how powerful my attacks will be after this breakthrough. Who was 1,000 feet away, arrival unfolded a portrait with a sharpening a knife will cause it to break, glance at it, but not sharpening it will cause it to rust and break. He was sure that this young man with a gentle and soothing face nor did he give any suggestions. The person he wanted to kill, even a monarch-level expert, the sword wouldn't be able to discover fewer chances he had to fight in the future. Not to mention a youth whose cultivation was completely to overcome all the crises by himself. Old Third Ma wasn't worried at all, and the sword spirit's role was to turn the tide in a situation where there was no chance of survival. Chu Yang's battle intent rose, change his direction and walk out of the town. Although his battle strength had improved and his cultivation had broken Chu Yang here, he was still far from the other party. The death of the young master of the Chu clan in Wujing Town wanted to sharpen a knife. He couldn't seek his own death by sharpening it. Furthermore, he had to take some measures. In a sensitive period the next moment, this might hinder him. Raised his head. Hindering Chu there was a warm was equivalent to hindering 13th He looked like a young man who was enjoying the morning sunshine and see where he went. His clothes fluttered once it was slightly more remote. He could kill him in another direction. The corpse. This direction led to the outskirts of Wujing Town. He slowed down along the way, slowly followed from a distance. The wildflowers although he was facing a crippled person without any cultivation, and the clouds in the sky were illusory. Didn't dare to be careless. Chu Yang walked and stopped in this like world. This. Any accident he clasped his hands behind his back. This was what and looked at the green grass and yellow flowers on both sides. Third Ma didn't want any accidents to happen when he killed eyes were gentle. He saw that seemed as if he had an inexplicable melancholy of a teenager. He didn't seem to be on guard at all. Old Third Ma was overjoyed. You're courting death. Don't blame me. I didn't expect 13th Master's mission to be so easy to accomplish. Thinking till here, he couldn't help but despise Chu Fei Long from the bottom of his heart. To be forced into such a state by such a careless and immature person who doesn't even have the slightest bit of cultivation, this Chu Fei Long can be considered to have created a new precedent. He thought to himself, when I finish my mission, I must tell 13th Master. Chu Feilong is mediocre and useless. The road in front of him gradually widened. Chu Yang's clothes fluttered in the wind. He walked leisurely and looked around quietly. Occasionally, he bent down and sniffed the wild grass and flowers. Then, a happy smile appeared on his face. It's too small. Old Third Ma curled his lips and followed Chu Yang from 200 to 300 feet away. However, he didn't realize that Chu Yang had taken 3 turns before he chose this path. The reason for that was because they were walking against the wind. The morning breeze brushed against his face. Every 10 steps, Chu Yang would bend down and sniff the wild flowers on his left. After another 10 steps, he would sniff the wild grass on his right. They were scattered left and right, seemingly without any pattern. But after he walked past them, if one paid attention, they would discover that every blade of grass that Chu Yang smelled was extending in the direction where he came from, straight to the heart of the road. Every petal that Chu Yang sniffed, the direction where the dewdrops pressed the petals down was also the path that he came from. It was still pointing to the heart of the road. Moreover, when Chu Yang sniffed the wild grass and the flower petals, the dew on them changed color imperceptibly. Then, in the blink of an eye, they returned to their original transparent state. Then, this drop of dew quickly evaporated into a thin layer of mist. It rose up and mixed with the faint morning fog. As the morning breeze blew, this faint mist drifted towards the road behind Chu Yang. Slowly, as Chu Yang walked slowly, there was still a piece of morning fog on the road behind him. It seemed that Chu Yang didn't even move the fog when he walked past. However, all of this was so difficult to notice in the beautiful morning light that shrouded the entire suburb. Finally, he walked out of the town. Looking up, he saw a circle of milky morning fog rising and falling slowly on the hillside. The scenery was really dreamy. Chu Yang took a deep breath and stretched his arms. He smiled comfortably and said, "It's really beautiful and comfortable." As he stretched his arms, his 2 palms naturally spread out and tilted to the back. Then, a piece of light fog that couldn't be seen by the naked eye suddenly rose from his palms. The morning breeze blew gently, taking away the light fog from his palms and spreading it densely in the space behind him. Then, Chu Yang seemed to be impatient and quickened his pace. Old Third Ma, who was behind him, had been paying attention to Chu Yang's every move. Seeing that Chu Yang sped up, he naturally quickened his pace as well. When Chu Yang walked to the side of a small forest, Old Third Ma was already 100 feet behind Chu Yang. Then, they rushed into the fog that Chu Yang had just released. Then, Old Third Ma felt that his mind suddenly seemed to be in a trance and then returned to normal. He shook his head in surprise, as if he was doubting that with his cultivation, why would such a trance happen? But when he looked up, Chu Yang's body had already entered the small forest and disappeared in the morning fog. He didn't have time to think. He turned his head and looked around, but there was no one around. He sneered silently and floated into the small forest like a cloud. In the small forest, the morning fog seemed to be thicker. But this was a natural phenomenon in the morning. Old Third Ma wouldn't suspect anything else. He looked around, but didn't find Chu Yang's figure. Anxious, he jumped up, stepped on the treetops and looked into the distance. But he found that Chu Yang's figure had already walked out of the small forest and was slowly turning into the small valley over there. He still had his hands behind his back, looking leisurely and elegant. Old Third Ma snorted and flew over without thinking at all. He had always been cautious. At this moment, he also had doubts in his heart. He has no cultivation, how can he walk so fast? But somehow, although he suspected this, he didn't think deeply about it. He only had one thought: catch up with him, kill him. He rushed over like a galloping horse. Old Third Ma was stunned when he turned at the entrance of the valley. In front of him, a young man in a light robe stood there leisurely with his hands behind his back and a warm smile on his face. His eyes were looking at Old Third Ma's face with a smile like spring water. The way he looked at Old Third Ma was like admiring a flower. A brilliant flower of blood. When Old Third Ma's eyes met with the young man's, he only felt that the young man's eyes turned from gentle spring water to sharp swords in an instant and shot into his eyes. Old Third Ma was shocked and suddenly felt a sharp pain in his pupils. He took a step back and his pupils shrank. He didn't expect that the young man was a top master. Caught off guard, he clearly felt that his eyes had been injured. When he looked out, his eyes were already a little blurred. Moreover, it seemed that there was a raging sword aura stirring in his eyes. Frightened, he closed his eyes and exerted his martial arts to force out the sword aura that pierced his eyes. 2 thin streaks of blood fell from the corners of his closed eyes. His expression suddenly became ferocious and terrifying. When he opened his eyes, they were already red. The young man in front of him still looked worried. He looked at Old Third Ma indifferently. His clothes fluttered and swayed gently among the green grass and red flowers. There was still no trace of life in him. Old Third Ma's heart gradually sank. He found that his intelligence was seriously wrong. At this moment, he cursed Chu Filong madly in his heart. Fuck you, is this the nephew whose cultivation was destroyed? Fuck you, even if you want to cheat me, you shouldn't cheat me like this. I don't know how much I can write today, but I will continue to write until 10 o'clock in the evening. I don't know how much I can explode today, but I really want to know how much we can catch up with today. Chapter 809. Old Third Ma's heart was as cold as ice. The young man in front of him could actually detect that he was being followed, and deliberately lured him here. He was also waiting for him to walk into the trap. It was obvious that he had a well-thought-out plan. How could he be a cripple? How could his cultivation be crippled? The other party's eyes were as sharp as swords. He stood there like an emperor in the clouds. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were indifferent and ruthless. He was making a merciless judgment on his life in this world. His eyes were as sharp as swords, and his eyes were thunderous. This was clearly the cultivation of at least a sword emperor. At least, he was a sword emperor. Furthermore, he was a high-level sword emperor. The most terrifying thing was that he couldn't see through his cultivation even though he was a third-stage martial monarch. Old Third Ma's heart sank, and an incredible thought suddenly emerged in his mind. Could it be, this is a trap that Chu Filong deliberately set up? Is it to kill me? He was about to speak, but Chu Yang had already spoken first. The latest chapter of the Holy Hall. I'm Chu Yang. You must know me, right? Chu Yang retracted the sword aura in his eyes, and his eyes became as warm as spring water. Yes. I'm here to kill you. Old Third Ma didn't want to say this, but somehow, he mustered up the courage to say this. After saying this, he wanted to slap himself in the face in frustration. How could I say this? I know you're coming. Chu Yang nodded and said naturally, you're just in time. I need someone to spar with me with the sword. Your cultivation is not bad. It's not high nor low. You're very suitable for this task. You're just in time to practice with me. What is this? He knew I was coming. How did he know I was coming? At this moment, Old Third Ma's heart became inexplicably weak, and he had an impulse to run away. The next moment, his heart sank even more. This was because the young man in front of him, whose cultivation was unpredictable, was suddenly emitting sword aura everywhere. The sword aura rushed to the Big Dipper. Chu Yang's entire person was standing in the midst of the sword energy. The long sword on Old Third Ma's waist suddenly popped out of the scabbard with a loud clang without warning. It swayed gently as if it was making a pilgrimage. Old Third Ma was shocked. His opponent did not even draw his sword. Just the vibration of his aura had created the effect of 10,000 swords entangling his body. His aura had even created the presence of I am the king of 10,000 swords, causing the lifeless and spiritless sword that belonged to his enemy to assume the posture of worshipping the sovereign of its peers. He took 3 steps back. Then, he pressed down on the sword hilt, and forced the sword back. Then, he looked at Chu Yang with a serious expression in his eyes. He asked in an extremely serious manner, "Who are you?" The moment the opponent unsheathed his sword, Chu Yang saw the shape of the sword clearly. The sword's body was slender and long. There was a small blood groove in the middle, but it emitted the color of the night. 3 inches from the hilt of the sword was engraved with a flamboyant character, Yi. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. People from the Yi clan. Then, he suddenly thought of the people who had besieged Chu Filing 3 days ago and what Chu Filing had said. Then, he thought of Chu Filong. Who am I? Chu Yang smiled. Didn't my second uncle tell you? Old Third Ma took another step back. His eyes had become certain. Chu Filong? People from the Yi clan seem to have died. The last time was in the 3 days. What's your name again? Yi Ranmo? Chu Yang frowned and relaxed his brows. This time, it's you. Old Third Ma felt cold all over. Of course, he knew that Yi Ranmo had led his brothers to besiege Chu Filing. Yi Wubo had even ordered him to arrange it himself. Since Yi Ranmo and the others had left, this matter had become a mystery. He didn't expect that the truth would be revealed here. It was indeed Chu Feilong's conspiracy. The Yi clan is a very scary clan. Chu Yang smiled slightly and said meaningfully, "The latest chapter of the Holy Hall." Old Third Ma was thinking about the meaning of this sentence. Suddenly, a sword light flashed in front of him. Chu Yang had already unsheathed his sword. The man and the sword became one. The sword aura in the sky surged, and the wind and thunder rumbled. The sword light was like a meteor, and it had already reached his throat. This sword seemed to have brought along the blood of the Dead Sea. The monstrous waves of the blood of the sea surged over, mixed with the howls and screams of hundreds of millions of aggrieved souls. The blood of the sea under the sword. Since Chu Yang had created these 4 sword moves, he had only truly exerted the peak power of these sword moves today. Old Third Ma shouted. His thoughts were in a mess. He moved his body horizontally, and at the same time, unsheathed his sword. Poke, push, stab, cut, and flick. After a series of clanking sounds, Old Third Ma roared. Blood suddenly splashed out from his shoulder like a fountain. But he didn't dare to treat his wound at this moment. He didn't even dare to take a look at it. Old Third Ma tried his best to stabilize his breathing rhythm as he stared at the terrifying young opponent opposite him. Cold sweat dripped down from his forehead and into his eyes. His eyes were stung by his tears, but he didn't even dare to blink. In the face of such a terrifying opponent, Old Third Ma knew that he only needed to blink once. Perhaps after this blink, he wouldn't need to blink again in his life. Chu Yang's robe fluttered elegantly. He somersaulted in the air, and then stood in the air. His eyes suddenly became indifferent and ruthless. The sword in his hand shone with a bloody light, with a cruelty and indifference that could devour the world. Then, the sword light whizzed up, as if a sword light path had suddenly spread out in the air. The mortal world was the ruthless Tao. Old Third Ma's pupils suddenly widened. At this moment, he had completely lost his desire to win. His only thought was to escape. If he couldn't escape, he was afraid that the 13th Master and the others would be completely annihilated under Chu Feilong's successive schemes. He screamed and floated up like a feather. He stabbed his sword madly. He resisted and retreated at the same time. The ruthless sword light of the mortal world was like the Milky Way pouring down from the sky. It persevered and rushed over fiercely. Old Third Ma fell to the ground from floating in the air. He retreated continuously, causing dust to fill the air. 2 deep gullies were ploughed out. The bloody light flashed again, and Old Third Ma's shoulder was stabbed again. 2 consecutive stabs were on his left shoulder, at the same position. As the blood gushed out, horrifying white bones jumped out of the skin on Third Ma's shoulder. The 2 severed veins did not shrink back but exposed the severed head to the air as if it was cooked. His shoulder bones were broken, and his veins were broken. Old Third Ma's left shoulder was crippled. Old Third Ma's eyes were filled with pain. He looked around anxiously for a way to escape. His heart and guts were already cold. If he continued to stay here, he was afraid that he would really die here. Dust flew up from the opposite side. An extremely fierce murderous intent, which was several times stronger than the previous 2 moves, rushed towards him. He only heard an indifferent and ruthless voice reciting, "Don't retract your blade after killing the entire world." The opponent's killing move was only used at this moment. Old Third Ma was terrified. He screamed desperately and waved his sword madly. Instantly, a huge white lotus flower formed by sword light bloomed, and then he pushed it out fiercely. The lotus flower of sword light bloomed suddenly. The horrifying sword aura from the opposite side rushed towards him. In this gloomy and desolate land of dust, Old Third Ma miraculously saw the opponent's indifferent, ruthless, and cruel eyes, which flashed with a determined cold light. The sword light rushed through like crushing dry weeds, and the lotus flower formed by Old Third Ma's sword light suddenly exploded. Old Third Ma was scared out of his wits. He howled from his throat. Circles of sword light bloomed with defensive sword light. His body retreated rapidly at a speed faster than the speed of flowing light. But the sword light on the other side was like a huge mountain pressing down on him, crushing his rings of sword light into smithereens. The long sword shone, and the sword light on the tip of the sword was crisscrossing. The tip of the sword was pointing at his throat. It was unstoppable. Old Third Ma's heart was filled with sorrow and despair. He had no choice but to urge all his potential. In an instant, he bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. He squeezed out all his vitality and injected it into the long sword in his hand. He swung it like a whirlwind. The long sword hummed and brought up a light curtain that connected the heaven and the earth. Then, Old Third Ma turned the long sword into a sword light and threw it out. Then, without hesitation, he retreated desperately and turned around. He used the fastest speed he could do to escape desperately without thinking about anything. Before he could turn around, he felt a chill on his forehead. Then, he turned around and felt a chill on his left hand and right shoulder. After he ran for 300 feet, he felt a cool and pleasant feeling on his back, followed by a warm and comfortable feeling. Then, with a long howl, he disappeared from the mountain path and entered the small forest from where he came. Only when he was out of the small forest did he feel pain in his back, chest, shoulders, and forehead. The vitality in his body was dissipating rapidly. A feeling called death rushed into his heart. At the last moment, Chu Yang's sword energy pierced through his forehead, creating a bloody hole in his forehead. After he turned around, 2 streams of sword energy chopped off both his arms. When he had rushed out 300 feet, he felt a warm and comfortable feeling after the pleasant coldness. However, Chu Yang's sword light had pierced through his heart from the back. His front and back were unobstructed. The blood in his body poured into the 5 internal organs, which was a temporary warm and comfortable feeling. This was perhaps the last enjoyment that the god of death gave to humans. Old Third Ma's eyes were blurred. He was in despair. He knew that he was going to die. Even if all the supreme martial artists in the world channeled all their cultivation into his body at the same time, there was absolutely no hope for him to survive. But he was not reconciled. He was not reconciled to die under the scheme of Chu Filong, this despicable person. Moreover, there was the 13th Master and his brothers over there. They were all in danger. Even if he died, he had to bring the news back. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the 18-year-old youth he was facing this time, whose cultivation was completely crippled, would actually be such a terrifying character. Chapter 8:10. This was Chu Yang's first battle in the upper three heavens. 3 moves. Old Third Ma, who was a third-stage martial monarch, had been defeated in just 3 moves. Although there were other factors, Chu Yang's cultivation had undergone an earth-shaking change compared to before. A third-stage martial monarch was an unattainable existence when Chu Yang was just a martial artist. An emperor was even a legend in the lower 3 heavens at that time. But now, a third-stage martial monarch had been defeated by him. Old Third Ma's figure disappeared like a flowing light. The flying dust slowly fell down, revealing Chu Yang's figure. Looking at the direction where Old Third Ma had disappeared, Chu Yang let out a long sigh of relief. When the dust settled, Chu Yang's body was full of wounds and bloodstains. Chu Yang gasped in pain. Looking at the wounds on his body, he swallowed the vitality spring water and applied it on his wounds. Every time he applied it, he frowned in pain. A martial monarch is indeed extraordinary. Chu Yang sighed deeply. He felt that his road ahead was more and more difficult. Although his strength had improved rapidly, he was still weak. I really don't know how many such experts Chu Filong has invited this time. Chu Yang frowned and pondered, how can I catch all of them in one fell swoop? After thinking for a long time, he still had no clue. He could only ponder and walk back slowly. In the battle just now, Chu Yang seemed to be at ease, but he knew that he had taken a big advantage. He had cleverly placed incense along the way, which had affected Old Third Ma's mind unknowingly. Although Old Third Ma's cultivation was profound and he naturally had a high resistance to such things, at least, his mind would not be as clear as before. And this was only Chu Yang's first step. For the first step, Chu Yang only asked Old Third Ma to have his mind blurred under the effect of the incense. Then, after a period of time, when he felt that the incense's effect was almost there, he released a mist of dispersing martial arts. As the name implied, the mist of dispersing martial arts was a poisonous mist that could silently disperse people's martial arts. The effect of the combination of the cultivation dispersing mist and the incense would far surpass that of ordinary cultivation dispersing powder. The combination of these 2 poisonous mists was the first type of mixed poison. However, the first kind of mixed poison had caused Old Third Ma's monarch-level cultivation to drop by 1 level without him noticing it at all. Only after entering the small forest did he spread out the soul-seizing fog. The soul-seizing fog was the most overbearing poisonous fog. Its function was to erode a person's consciousness. However, if this kind of soul-seizing fog was used from the beginning, it would be easily detected, so it had to be foreshadowed with incense. The combination of the soul-seizing mist and the incense was the second type of poison. The combination of the soul-seizing fog and the cultivation dispersing fog was the third type of poison. Poison incense, cultivation dispersing fog, and soul-stealing fog. The combination of the 3 was a unique super-mixed poison that had never appeared in the human world for more than 80,000 years since the first master of the Calamity Sword. This kind of vicious martial art that could kill without leaving a trace was the invincible 3 steps 1 kill of the first-generation Calamity Sword Master. Old Third Ma didn't notice this strange killing technique that had been extinct in the heavenly layer for 80,000 years. He took it all step by step. When Chu Yang decided to make a move, Old Third Ma's cultivation had already dropped to the first stage of the monarch level without him noticing it at all. However, he was first poisoned by the incense and then the soul-seizing fog. How could he notice it when his mind was in a mess? Then, Chu Yang, who was supposed to be a powerless cripple, actually turned his eyes into sharp swords and suddenly broke out the cultivation of a sword sovereign. Old Third Ma was caught off guard and suffered a great loss, causing his vision to be impaired. Therefore, in the dust-filled sky, Chu Yang could clearly see Old Third Ma. However, Old Third Ma only had the vision of an ordinary person. How could he see Chu Yang? If he could see it, he wouldn't be so flustered. Because every time they fought, Chu Yang would be injured. At the very least, Chu Yang would be injured by his strong martial power. However, he couldn't see it. He only knew in a panic that Chu Yang wasn't injured at all. This meant that Chu Yang's cultivation was far above his. Before this, under the cover of Chu Yang's Thousand Phantom technique, he couldn't see through Chu Yang's cultivation at all. This was another preconceived idea. What he saw could only be an invincible sword sovereign. Under such psychological hints step by step, he could only have a feeling of looking up at a high mountain. Fear also followed. Slowly, he was scared out of his wits and could only escape. Moreover, it also gave him a clear intuition that he had fallen into Chu Feilong's trap. This was human nature. Firstly, it was to shirk one's own responsibility. Secondly, it was to vent one's anger on others once there was an accident. Under the dual effects of the incense and the soul-seizing fog, the evil side of human nature and the fear in one's heart were stimulated. At this time, Old Third Ma had no intention to fight at all. It was equivalent to a complete defeat. Otherwise, even if Old Third Ma's martial power had decreased a lot, how could he be defeated so easily? From various aspects of confusion, from psychological warfare to actual combat, all of them were full of conspiracies and trick. If Old Third Ma didn't lose, something strange would have happened. Everything was in his favor at the right time, the right place, and the right people, plus the indefensible mixed poison skill. Yi Wubo held the teacup calmly and slowly tasted it. It was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. If Yi Wubo didn't open his mouth, no one dared to speak. This 13th master of the Yi clan was a well-known figure for his brutality. Among the direct descendants of the Yi clan, everyone had a high cultivation. Not only were their statuses high, but their cultivations were also outstanding. The Yi clan had their own secret techniques to raise their cultivations. Although this 13th master was one of the weaker ones, his cultivation was close to the martial saint level. Old Third Ma has been out for a day. Yi Wubo said lightly. Even if he can't break into the law enforcement hall to kill people, he should have completed his task now. Can that little bastard hide in the law enforcement hall and not come out? The sturdy middle-aged man at the side laughed and said, Old Third Ma has always liked to play cat and mouse. Now, he probably doesn't know how to deal with that poor little fellow. Instantly, everyone chuckled. Chu Feilong also felt that the heaviness in his heart lessened a little. If Chu Yang died like this, although it wouldn't be satisfying, but, humph, it's better to die than to live. Otherwise, I'll feel sick of seeing him every time. Yi Wubo's eyes flashed, and he said lightly, Old Third Ma has a bad temper. This is also the reason why I've always let him stay by my side and rarely let him go out alone for a task. It only takes one stab to kill someone, although it's more satisfying to torture someone, but many accidents happen during this period of time. So, you have to remember that no matter how hateful the person you want to kill is, as long as you can chop off his head at the first instant, don't hesitate. Everyone nodded simultaneously. Yi Wubo smiled coldly and said, as long as this person dies, the culprit will be gone. Then, it'll be equally satisfying to torture his family members. Chu Feilong couldn't help but shudder. Suddenly, Yi Wubo frowned and his ears moved. The other 4 people in the room were also startled. The atmosphere in the room instantly became heavy. Someone's flying towards here at high speed. Yi Wubo frowned. It seems to be Old Third Ma, but he shouldn't be so impatient. Could it be that an accident has happened? Another old man with a goatee stood up immediately. I'll go and take a look. He's already here. At this moment, a sharp sound of something breaking through the air came from afar. It entered the restaurant with a bang, and then it kept crashing towards the direction of this private room. Everyone's expression changed at the same time. 13th Master. With a bang, old Third Ma's blood-soaked body appeared at the door. Everyone was stunned at the moment they saw him. Both of old Third Ma's arms were gone, and there was a deep bloody hole on his forehead. Blood mixed with milky white brain matter slowly seeped out. There was a thin bloody hole on his chest. It could be seen that it was the protrusion of the sword tip. Then, there must be a big bloody hole on his back. A sword pierced through his forehead. A sword pierced through his heart. Yi Wubo could tell at a glance that old Third Ma was dead for sure. The reason he was able to make it back here was because he was using the method of burning his divine soul. It was not easy at all. Even so, he would die at any time. Say what you want to say, Yi Wubo shouted. Old Third Ma finally saw the person he wanted to see. His mind relaxed, and he fell down. That old man with a goatee held him in his arms, and a dense amount of mystical chi was continuously injected into his body. But he found that his meridians were completely blocked, and he couldn't enter. It's useless, the old man with a goatee shook his head sadly. Old Third Ma's throat made some noises. He stared at Chu Filong and said intermittently, 13th. Third Master, Chu Filong, is a spy. That Chu Yang, is a sword. Emperor. I. His voice suddenly stopped, and blood gushed out from old Third Ma's throat crazily. His blood clots and internal organs turned into pieces and flowed out from his mouth. He opened his eyes wide in vain. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't. Only strange gurgling sounds came from his throat. With a flash of sword light, old Third Ma's throat was cut off completely. The sword light in Yi Wubo's hand was sparkling like autumn water. Just now, he was the one who saved old Third Ma from suffering. He killed him cleanly with a sword. The other four people revealed a mournful look at the same time. Yi Wubo's ghostfire-like eyes stared at the sword in his hand. He lowered his head and suddenly sneered. Chu Filong was scared out of his wits. He knelt down, 13th Master. I'm wronged. Yi Wubo smiled faintly. He stared at the sword with his ghostly fire-like eyes and laughed softly. Old Third Ma exchanged his life for this information. How can it be fake? I'll continue to work hard. Aunt Fong had returned home from work and was cooking. Begging for votes, please satisfy my vanity as a man. Let Sister Fong see our strength, I have already bragged in front of her. If I can't get out of this embarrassing situation, then I won't be able to listen to my husband's orders. So, I'm shouting myself hoarse begging for votes. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.